Gibson and Gibson were essentially neighbors when we were just starting our family, just married down there in Nairn. And then he moved north, and we got the property. Oh, okay. Were you there? Okay, you were there for a while. I'm gone for a while.
Hi, how are you?
Did they come down? Because they were kind of, they were each Gibson. Gibson turned out, you Well, he's still there, right?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our May 14th council meeting. I kind of think the community wanted to get together tonight. I'm kind of thinking the community wanted to get together tonight because it's spring. We haven't seen each other all winter, and winter is officially over. I understood that to be happening. So thank you very much for attending tonight. We will be deviating from our procedural process just because all of council is very concerned to address any concerns that you have. So if you can bear with me as we pussyfoot through and try to reconfigure what it is that we're going to do. So first of all, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of the location of the emergency exits. This is very important for public safety. And also for council members, we have to disclose pecuniary interest at any time throughout the meeting. So that has to be done in writing. And if required, we will break at 8:30 p.m. I just wanted to also let you know that council is virtuing into the cyber area of meetings. We are going to start videotaping our council meetings. So this one is a test meeting for recording, so just so that you are aware that if you do come forward and say anything that you could be on tape. So at this time, I'd like to ask for council to approve the agenda session 9, 2019 as circulated. Moved by Martin and seconded by Creelman. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. And the previous minutes. That council approves the minutes of 8, 2019 as circulated. Moved by Magdalo and seconded by Nix. Any discussion? All in favor? That carries. And at this point, and it's because we all know and love him very well, and I'm really glad that you're all in attendance, I'd like to make a presentation to our Director of Public Works, Michael Dunmore. So if you could please come forward, Michael. He wore a tie. So this is a great privilege because we stole him from Mulmer. 10 years service award presented to Michael Dunmore in grateful appreciation of your service and commitment to the town of Mulmer, 2009 to 2019.
Couldn't be in a better place.
How come the roads are so bumpy? Oh, it was beautiful rolling last night.
So,
It's on.
so I hope we have another 10 years of your service, sir. So at this point, normally we have public question period, but I have a feeling of the questions that you are going to be asking. So what I've asked is if we can deviate from the normal procedure, if it's the will of council, that we hear from Mike Clark regarding the potential event that he is proposing and his plans. So if that is in agreement with you?
I just have one question. We do have a scheduled delegation at 7:15, and in fairness to that person, has that,
Mr. Simpson?
They were informed that it would probably be 7:30 before we start.
Okay.
7:30 tonight or
Well, this is not a public meeting regarding this particular item. This is a presentation so that we can update residents and hopefully allow our opportunity to realize that we are working on the situation. So, Mr. Clark, if you are willing to come forward, we appreciate you coming here and explaining what it is that you are proposing. Yeah. Yep, it's ready to go.
Thanks for having me. So on the weekend, I got a bunch of correspondence that I guess was generated by some individuals or a bunch of individuals. So first of all, I want to tell you a little bit about me. So I've been a resident of Mono Township for 25 years. My kids grew up here. I raised my family here, mostly on Bonavista Drive. I've played hockey with people in this room. You've been to my house. And we decided to buy a piece of property that we were going to turn into our version of a hobby farm. Okay? So I owned horses for years and years. As a matter of fact, my daughter was a Canadian horse riding champion from Mono Township. So we purchased it a year ago. I've worked with Dave for the past year to go through NVCA permits, which we have, municipal permits, which we got, so that I could build my own private shop, my own private barn, so that I could put my RV and my truck in it. And we were going to knock the house down. And then my son said, well, why don't I live in it? I said, okay, so we renovated it, turned it into a pretty cool spot. So we nicknamed it the Gooseville Tavern because of the proximity in Gooseville. So during that time, we own a fairly unique business with motorcycles. We build custom hot rod motorcycles, international motorcycles. We go all over North America and we show them. So we said, why don't we have a show and shine so that people can come, bring their bike and see it, okay? So we decided that we would do that, and we were at the International Bike Show in Toronto, and a lot of people said, hey, listen, where can we come and see your bikes? I said, well, maybe we'll have a little show this summer. So that's what we decided to do. But I can tell you that on Saturday, when I got all the emails, and I got them all, and I was a little taken back by some of the verbiage, and a little taken back by a lot of the accusations that were incorrect. So I contacted Mark early and Fred, and I came here yesterday. And I said, listen, here's what's going on. I said, how can I rectify this and still maintain what it is that I want to do on my property? So I sat here for 2 hours with Fred and Mark. Then I went home and I said, okay, I work through stuff like this all the time. On a very, very large construction company, and I deal with this stuff every day in the city of Toronto. So today, I went and I made arrangements for us to move our event to the Orangeville Fair. So I've rented the fairgrounds for that weekend, okay? So I did that on my own after meeting with Fred and Mark. With Dave informed me a couple weeks ago that my ancillary buildings were too big for the coverage. So this is actually my updated site plan for minor variance for my barn, so I can put my truck and my bus in it. So we've got permit applications in at Dufferin County for the shop, and for us to widen the temporary entrance so that I can get my truck in, because right now it's too narrow. So those applications are in. I've applied for the minor variance, and paid all the fees for that, and hopefully I can get my barn built so that I can hang out on my 40 acres there when I decide to retire, like much of you folk are doing. So it's not a public bar, it's mine, it's my own, belongs to me. Okay, you can't come there and get a beer unless I invite you, okay? I may or may not, but it's mine, okay? It has nothing to do with the public. It has nothing to do with a commercial property. It's a residential property. So I've spent the last couple of days making sure that I satisfy your wishes, okay? I'm not that kind of person that has been labeled in these emails. Trust me, I'm not that person, okay? I'm a businessman. So, anybody got any questions? Yep.
The magazine advertisement is totally different from what you say. It says there's a tavern there, and it seems to be, you have no idea how many people are going to show up.
Well, like I just said,
Maybe another court over.
no, it's not. It's my property.
You're minimizing the whole thing. You put an advertisement out in a national magazine saying there's a tavern there. You don't know how many people are going to show up. And you're misleading people by saying there's a tavern there.
I changed the venue. I changed it. I did that today. I did that today. I changed the venue today. I rented.
My first thought was, why didn't you go to the Orangeville Fairground in the first place?
Well, quite frankly, I didn't expect very many people to come. So that's why I did that today. It's not a public tavern. It's my tavern. I could have called it Mike's Man Cave, right?
It was totally misleading, and you don't know how many people are going to miss that, and they're going to show up.
They're not going to show up. They won't be able to get in. They won't be able to get in. They won't be able to get in.
So why did you advertise it that way?
What do you mean, why didn't I advertise it that way? Because I wanted people to come over and show their bikes and give some money to some children. Did you not notice we're doing this to donate to kids' sport?
I noticed that as
It says a portion of the proceeds.
We're giving it all to kids' sport. I don't need the money.
Well, then why does it say a portion?
Well, maybe a portion has to go to pay, I don't know, some fees or something. I don't know.
I just,
I think we're getting beyond what we need to
I just
do.
want to clarify with everybody that Mr. Clark has offered to come forward and to speak on his behalf. He has changed the venue. Going forward, whether or not he chooses to do anything further with his property is a completely different discussion point, and that has planning issues and controls that are all covered within our official plan, the NVCA, and our planning department. So I think that Mr. Clark at this point has shown his direction in terms of what he's trying to do. He has moved the venue. So the concerns for our local residents in terms of traffic, noise, and disturbance with what we are normally used to in a rural area is not going to happen on his property June 22nd and June 23rd. So I think we need to focus on that. And then if there's any specific questions that are in regards to anything else, the planning issue will be coming forward on a future agenda for the municipal approvals. And so that way we you have the opportunity to come and voice your concerns and objections or positive points, whatever, at another meeting. But this particular opportunity was, we weren't sure exactly how this was going to go, and Mr. Clark has come forward to say that he has changed the location for the venue.
I have a question. And I don't know very much about your circumstance or why we're even here, except I happen to be getting an email list. I got on it too, yeah. I'm also one that, I've never been in favor of the noise of motorcycles, let's say that, and I probably want to. Just determine whether your statement that you moved the venue this year for some sort of a show, which I presume is going to be with motorcycles and noisy. Is that a one-time move? Are you intending somewhere along the line to, by your noise, be an irritation to me in the future?
Well, by no means do I want to be an irritation to you, and it was something that we decided to do this year. If it becomes that we have a big attendance, then I'll just rent the Orangeville Fairgrounds moving forward. That's you know, there's no way that I would want to jam, you know, too many people in a little spot anyway. But you know what? It seems to be a pretty good venue, so we'll move over there. Okay. But there's more noise in your weed eater than there is in a motorcycle.
Okay.
It's truth.
Well, okay. And again, I've tried to bring this back. This is not a public meeting that we are trying to debate the pros and cons of this particular issue. What we were trying to do as council is to bring you information forward. So Mr. Clark has explained to you what his decision is in terms of changing the location of the venue for the June 22nd, 23rd. He's secured the Orangeville Ag Society Event Center. I also would like to offer the opportunity for staff to provide us with information on investigation on what we've done in terms of planning. So, Mr. Trotman, if you'd be able to.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ryan. So, Mr. Clark made an application back in October last year for an accessory. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
can you hear
you
me
have
now? He made an application for an accessory. No?
You need to put
you
the
know-
volume up.
How about now? I'll try again, sorry. So Mr. Clark made an application for an accessory building on his property at the corner of Pure Ontario and Motor Center Road. This is the northeast corner. Property 674305 here, Ontario, in case those who need to know understand. So the application was for, it was about 1,400 square feet, 14,000 square feet, excuse me, 14,080. Yes, it's sort of on the larger size, but it's not entirely rare for that kind of structure to be proposed on a property in Mono, in the rural area. We've seen equestrian arenas and so forth larger than your average garden shed in a rural area, never mind an urban area. It was made, the municipal approval, which was for that building, had to go and be reviewed against coverage. So this is accessory lot coverage. So these include things like outbuildings, things of that nature that can't exceed the overall coverage on a lot. Just like in an urban area, there's only so much coverage you can have for outbuildings and that sort of thing. And this particular building with the existing garages on site and a small older barn on site came close to total coverage, but certainly did not exceed it. And that was a factor. And the other factor was that the municipal approval says it's a personal workshop for personal use. And that was signed by one of his staff members and himself. And so that is what we issue to an applicant before they take their plans to Dufferin County Building Department. We don't have an in-house building department, so some of you may know that an applicant then has to go to Dufferin County to have the actual construction plans reviewed under Ontario Building Code. And that would be the next step for Mr. Clark to do. I don't believe that's happened yet. There's another aspect to this, and of course, he has a regulated area on his property that is a portion of the property. It's more flood prone than others based on storm events. Lower lands, valley lands, things of that nature. There's also wetland there. And so the Conservation Authority, the NVCA, Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority, also had to do a review as part of that process. And they issue their own separate permit. And their permit it's a conditional permit. It's not, it has conditions to it, just like a building permit may have, as well as requirements and compliance under the building code. And that was issued April 4th. And he's got to abide by those for this one structure. Since then, I think there's been a desire on Mr. Clark's part to add more. And so I think that's partly what's caused some confusion. Regardless, anything further that goes on that property would probably have to seek a minor variance application. And that's the future meeting that Mayor Ryan has alluded to. So this is to have a review and by the Committee of Adjustment for the overall coverage that would now probably go over the permitted amount. That meeting has yet to be set. But yeah, it's a public process, and there is a capture zone for people who would be close enough to get a letter in the mail. But we usually, and most always, if not always, put an advertisement in the newspaper as well, so people can read and understand. And then, of course, it's also posted to our website. So that date has yet to be set. That's where things stands at this point in time. I think in terms of the event that was proposed on the property that Mr. Clark alluded to, that I believe now is, so I guess that's news to me, that it's going to the Ag Center. I'm not sure what at this point Mr. Clark intends to do for June 22nd, 23rd. Maybe he can speak to that, but we do have a bylaw enforcement officer who's been advised, and I mean, should it be necessary? I'm not suggesting that it would be, and in any case, such as a venue like this or similar venues where, it could get busy, you're right, it could get crowded, we can always have the OPP on standby, and we have advised them as well. So that's where things stand at this point, although my understanding is the venue is now going to be held at the agricultural campus.
And so because of that, it would be advertised as such through Mr. Clark's venues, so. Yes, Mr. Mitchell.
Has there been a special events permit issued for the 22nd?
And that's what caused the problem, that we did not have any application for that. And because Mr. Clark realized that his timeline was outdated, he made that choice to secure the OAS Center. He has done that today.
Can't hear you.
Oh, so,
Special events permit, has he received that as yet, or applied for it?
no, No, he has not, and so that, it would have been one of the issues that we, as council, would have brought forward, because that was part of what was required. Mr. Von Bay?
Thank you, Your Worship. There are a few little issues that I'd like to raise with the deputy, Mr. C. Why, that's service. Thank you, Doctor. A few issues that I think should be thought about in what's happening. Initially, in listening to what Mr. Clark said, I have to be very candid. I was brought up to speed by one of my neighbors, and I've lived here for 42 years. Consider myself a bit of a senior citizen of the area, and I had received absolutely nothing from council or Mono in any capacity on what was happening at the corner of, we all know what the corner is. I was very shocked because this is something which is impacting not only me, because I'm a very close neighbor to that property, but a lot of people, obviously, all you have to do is look around here, that are not very happy about what either council did or did not do, or how Mr. Clark has misled a whole lot of people. Now, it's very simple.
So, Mr. Von Bay, if I could interject on that?
Yes, you can.
Council was not aware until we had an email from one of our fellow council members saying, I've had contact with a resident and this is what's happening. And that was our first opportunity, and that was about a week and a half ago. So we have been accused of being asleep at the switch, but we had no idea that this event was being proposed. That being said, the application for planning, etc., had been in the works, but it was within the jurisdiction of what was allowed. So that's why council would not be, it's just it would be like if you had decided that you wanted to build an extra accessory building on your property, the application, we don't necessarily see that. However, now we know that the application could go beyond that, so we will be going through those processes.
Well, I should certainly hope so, Your Worship, but in fairness, I don't quite accept what you've said, because if you look at the notice which has been sent out by Clark, Smokey's Garage Presents opening weekend, Saturday, June 22nd, location Smokey's Gooseville Tavern, corner of County Road 8 and here Ontario Street. This is public information. Now, if it's public information, then this council should have been aware of that. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay, Mr. Von Bay, I appreciate that idea, but however, I am not able to look at every website on the internet to find out what's going on in Mono.
Well, then
So-
that is a responsibility of Mr. Clark in putting forward this entire concept to have properly brought it to the attention of you folks sitting there, and that was not done.
Right?
Correct?
That's correct, and that's why we have this issue.
Now, there's a few issues that I would like to put on record in order that they be totally clarified, and that is the issue of the ownership of this property. I've done my own due diligence on this, Your Worship, and I think you would expect no less from me. This property that is at the corner is designated basically as 0158, and I stand to be corrected, and if I'm wrong, then you go ahead. 0158, the lot right beside it is 0157. As my understanding is that 0158, which is precisely where the tavern was to be, is it was conveyed to Michael Robert Clark and Linda Diane Margaret Clark on July 20, 2018 for $1.2 million. The property beside remains to be owned by James Glenn Oler. That is 0157. And I think that in the minutes that come out of this meeting, I would like to see that that is confirmed, and if my understanding of this is incorrect, then I would appreciate being notified of that. But the interesting thing is that when we look at 0158, which is the Clark property, I drive by it at least 5-6 times a day. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I assume that you gentlemen will correct me if I'm wrong. This falls under the Niagara Escarpment, correct?
No.
No? It falls under the Nottawasaga, correct?
The Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority has jurisdiction over the vast area of Mono, but not just. The valley has a portion, so does Toronto Region. Within each of their jurisdictional areas, they define regulated areas, which are the more flood-prone areas. So yes, this property, both of them actually, have, as well as zoning and designations, Conservation Authority jurisdictional area, NVCA, and both have a regulated area.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned zoning, sir, because in the research that I've done, and I've done quite extensive title searches on this, I believe that the zoning here is managed forest. Is that correct?
No. A managed forest plan, or an FMP, is a process which an owner can undertake through the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry to define a woodland that can be managed, for lack of a better word, and then as part of that management at assigned times have selected harvesting.
Well, in that case, sir, I'd ask you and your colleagues to verify MPAC and everything that is published on this property. It is defined as managed forest property, seasonal residence not on water. You can either correct me or verify that in your minutes. Now we get to the specific property that we're talking about. And again, maybe you can help me on this. How many driveways are allowed on a property like 0158?
I'll defer that question to our Director of Public Works.
Please.
How many driveways are allowed and how many driveways there are? Or
No,
sometimes,
how many are allowed?
Sometimes something that gets a little taken out of context.
No, my question is
You
how
should
many are
have-
allowed?
You should have one residential driveway, sir. And if the warrants exist, we would provide a farming or alternate access, should it be deemed appropriate.
Well, right now there are 3 leading into this property. And they've cut down all the trees to make sure that there will be 3. If you drive by, you can see the logs lying there. Maybe you haven't driven by. I do.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I drive by every day. So there is one access off of here, Ontario. And I would think that the county, Mr. Clark will be dealing with the county with respect to his County Road 8 entrance points.
How about the other 2 driveways?
My recollection shows one off of here, Ontario, so.
You'd better check that, sir. There are 3.
And that's fine. There's many properties in Mono where people have more than one access point.
Not on this size property, sir. You can point me to any one, and I'll take you up on that one.
I would be happy to go for a drive with you.
I will
Yep.
very definitely, you can
Serious.
drive and I'll point out.
Serious, the Public Works tries to limit our driveways to one residential property, and we will try and keep to one farming access point. Problem is with some of our residential driveways, the farm equipment of today does not fit down a,
Well, he said he wanted one driveway for a truck that he has. I'd like to know how many tons that truck is.
and that's up to Mr. Clark. It's personal to him, what he operates and what he drives, but if he's looking for an access point off of County Road 8, he'll have to deal with the Public Works Department from the County of Dufferin.
Okay?
So,
To be a little more specific, Mr. Clark was specific on one point.
Mr. Von Vey?
Yes.
This isn't a public meeting on this particular item. We
Well,
were
what is it
trying-
then? Look at all
This is
these
our-
people here.
This is our regular council meeting, and we have deviated from procedure to allow for Mr. Clark to present and for staff to tell us an update of what they have done to date. There is still lots of stuff that needs to go on. And so my concern is that if I allow you to present all of your technical data, this isn't the purview for that. This isn't what, we did not convene a public meeting on this matter. This is our council meeting, this is our public question period. So I appreciate what you're trying to identify, and I think probably the best way for you to do that is to provide that to council in writing so that we can consider that when we go through the potential rezoning of the property and all of the other issues that go on beyond for the planning matter. I respectfully ask that you allow council, because we do have a full agenda to go through going forward. So I know that probably is not sitting well with you, but.
No, it's not at all.
Because this was not the intention. Normally, the council would have a question period, and it would be a question, and more than likely would have been noted and answered to later.
Your Worship, in exchanges, and I think you're very familiar, I've been involved in 3 real, pissing matches affecting mono. And we've been successful in every one of them, and I've had more communications from people here. My emails are like this thick, and my phone is jammed because they are upset with what is happening with this issue. That's why I'm here talking.
Okay, and so
And you're shutting me down.
I am trying to ask for your consideration. This is not the venue for us to be doing this, because this item isn't even on the agenda. We are
It certainly
allowed-
was alluded to be on the agenda by communications I've received, and you know what I'm talking about.
Well, so it was the idea that I was going to allow for discussion to take place, but not formal presentations or items being entered into the record, et cetera, et cetera. This is not a legal proceeding for this item, because this is a problem that has come forward, and we're trying to make sure that the owner of the property is aware of the problem. Staff is doing everything that they can with our bylaws and enforcement issues, and so we are trying to address this. And now the owner has said that the event, which was a big problem for everybody, is not going to be held on the 22nd or 23rd. So now the other part of it is the planning issue, and the planning issue will be addressed as those planning documents come forward. So, and this is where we're getting into exactly what it was that I was concerned about. Yes, I know, there's a lot of questions. And and this is not a public meeting, but I will allow I'm going to allow your
I'm not done
question.
yet. That's
Okay.
fine. Let her tell me.
Clarification on what
Go ahead.
opening weekend means. Is there not, is that a implication that there would be more than one event? What does opening weekend mean then?
We have a big crowd.
Oh, I just wanted to know what opening weekend meant for opening weekend show and shine. There's almost an inference there that there would be more than one event.
Okay.
And did I was sitting back there, did I hear that he's applying for a variance? And I don't want to sound cynical or anything, but you don't think there's any reason that the act of good faith of moving to the fairgrounds has anything with hopes for the variance?
In terms of the variance.
I
is
would
a
hope it
separate-
was two separate issues.
Yes, it is two separate issues, and this council is very committed to the planning issues of our municipality in terms of making sure that it is what our residents want to see going under the official plan. So those meetings are open, and yes, it will be advertised, and everybody can bring their opinions forward, and then we deal with it from there. Sir?
Victor Alchuk, 714503 First Line EHS, Mono. I've been up here better than 40 years. My concern is that if someone can go ahead and do all this without your knowledge, what's to prevent me from putting on my property whatever I want going ahead? Several years ago, we had people on First Line who were renting property. They brought in a stage, they brought in two 63-foot trailers packed with sound equipment. When they turned the sound equipment on, the dishes in our kitchen, half a mile away, were vibrating. We put up with it weekend after weekend. And they said, we're just having fun. That bothers me. The fact that people can go ahead and do this and then come afterwards and say, oh, it's better to ask forgiveness than for permission. I think we need to sit down. So I would like to ask you, when will we have a public meeting in which we can present our opposition or our elocution?
Okay.
I'm not against this gentleman. I would just like to have known that this was going on. If I am going to go ahead and build a facility on my property and then ask 18,000 dancing ladies to come and present, I'm sure I will get a popular response. But could we?
I respect your question,
But
and
could we get an answer? Will there be a public meeting at which we, the public, who live in Mono, who have purchased here, who lived here, and have raised our families, can present either our objections or our accolades? Because I appreciate that people have the opportunity to present and build their future, their business, whatever.
right.
Doesn't there have to be some application before council before we can call a public meeting? We don't have an application for anything in front of us.
Well, neither did we.
No.
We didn't know this was happening.
We didn't
Right.
have it.
So would you like one in writing from me? I'll give you one in 15 seconds.
An application for what?
Well, to hold a public meeting, sir.
Well,
No?
okay, but I think
I don't
maybe,
need one?
I think what,
Then ask for one.
in the essence of what it is that you're asking is that this is a concern throughout the whole municipality. And you're absolutely right. Your next door neighbor a new neighbor could move in and decide that that's what they want to do, and they don't realize that they should have asked for an event permit or any kind of discussion regarding what it is that they want to do on their property. And I think that you have a point, and I would like to ask that the clerk put it on our next agenda, that council discusses this, because this is becoming a reality in our
And
neighborhood.
do we not have a bylaw officer?
We
And the
do,
bylaw officer should be enforcing the bylaws, and that should be somewhere in the bylaws.
That's right, and we do have a bylaw officer, we do have OPP presence, but the thing is that it's complaint-driven. And so,
Why?
so
Why?
that's the whole thing. So how, you know, it's like the chicken and the egg. Do we know where something has happened and we are hearing about it after the fact? Or do we get a notification on the World Wide Web that something is happening and so then we can react? What is the balance? So maybe this discussion needs to be had, and yes, the public needs to be involved in this because we need to have those kinds of opportunities to control what's happening in our neighborhood. So.
I'll give a perfect example of what should be changed. The rule that says landfill next to my home, only neighbors within a mile had to receive notice of the proposed landfill. I think anything that affects the citizens of Mono, everybody ought to know, not just within a mile or half a mile.
Right.
Because
And-
we are the paying citizens, and we're the ones who are going to bear the burden of the brunt.
And I appreciate that, Elaine, and after the situation that occurred, we did start to change our postings on our website and also our notifications in newspaper and the notifications to the areas. So, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. I have some questions for Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, you have a web presence, a website. You're on Facebook. You're on various other things such as Instagram. You're changing the location of the event. What are you going to do to redirect all the people who have liked your posting about the event on Dufferin Road 8?
So I have a coordinator that works for me, does all that. She's changing all of that right now. She's putting the new location on it.
And you realize that there will be a large number of people who will probably attend your house on that date, on those 2 days.
They won't be able to get in. Like, they won't be able to get on the property.
So I have another question. You bill yourself as Smokey's Garage. Where's the garage?
We don't have a garage, it's just a name.
It's just a name, just like the tavern?
Yeah, it's just a name.
Okay. So the 14,080 square foot structure that you propose, that by the way does not require a variance, does not require a variance, it will not trigger a public meeting. You describe it as a personal workshop and storage facility. You're not selling anything from it? You're not doing any business, any commercial activities from that location? Nothing whatsoever? Okay. And
They're mine, they're building for me, or I build one for you.
And to further clarify, there is a proposed 3,360 square foot storage barn, which does tip the scales for a minor variance. Is that not correct? So that would be the only opportunity that the public would have, and that is potentially after the 14,000 square foot building is constructed. Is that not correct, Mr. Trotman?
Deputy Mayor Creelman, that is correct. So when there is a requirement on the Planning Act, such as rezoning, an official plan designation, a change or amendment, or a minor variance, it does trigger a statutory meeting that has minimum circulation requirements. I appreciate, you know, when people say it should be area-wide or mono-wide. What we do is we put it in the newspaper. We can't send a letter to everybody in Mono, and we abide by what the minimum requirements are under the Planning Act. And, you know, we make some judgment as to if a few more people should be captured based on where the scribed limits are. We add them in as well, of course. But it's on our website. We always post statutory meetings on our website. They're in the local paper, usually Orangeville Citizen. If it's in the north part of Mono, then the Shelburne and or New Tecumseth papers. And then also to those within the prescribed area. It would be impossible, I think, to just always give letters to every person in the municipality. That would be somewhat not feasible. But we do post on the website, and we put it in the local newspaper. That's how, the Planning Act says that's how people beyond the limited area should get notification.
Your Worship, one point on what this gentleman just said right now on, we'll put it in a newspaper. I'm right on, you know exactly where I live. Drive by tomorrow and see where the last 8 weeks of newspapers are. The ditch. So if you expect all of these good people here to be notified by newspaper, that's a pipe dream.
The Orangeville Citizen has a website. It's also on their website.
And that's why we do post it on our website, our town website, and we do,
That's assuming that everyone is on the internet.
That is correct.
By the mail.
Mr. Clark, if I can just follow up with my question about the personal workshop and storage facility. So if I go into the county of Dufferin tomorrow and look at the application for a building permit, it's just going to show a big old barn?
It's going to show a workshop.
It's going to show a workshop, and that's it? Thank you.
Councillor Martin?
I just wondered if this is an event and it's at the Ag Center, do we not have to have an event permit for that as well? Does that come through us?
No.
And as the date isn't changing?
No.
The date is the same?
So it wouldn't have to, it doesn't come under our jurisdiction. It's up to the OAS to manage.
Okay. Yes.
I'm really pleased that this gentleman says that his motorcycles and motorcycles coming to this event from all over Ontario will be as quiet as whippersnappers. It is possible to test the mufflers of motorcycles. I know, I think it was done down in Caledon. It's done out in Calgary. Will we guarantee, or will you guarantee that no muffler will be louder than it is allowed to be by law? Then we shouldn't allow them on the road. We should have the police out there and test every motorcycle, put it in the ad, your mufflers will be tested by the OPP.
I think you should.
Yes, agree, test.
Yeah. And the problem is trying to get it through the provincial offences court is
Well,
where
that's
the
their
issue
fault,
is.
but
Yeah.
we still know they're going to be checked.
Yes, sir.
Chris Costanyamono. To address his concerns, if they're coming from out of the state, they don't need to abide by our noise bylaws because they're just here for a short period. As for the residents, if you look online, the residence or the website shows pictures of that residence already turned into a tavern. It's not a residence anymore, it is a bar. So you guys have the high-speed internet here. I'm still on dial-up, so my internet's slow. So me going on the internet to check stuff, I don't get it, especially the stormy nights that we've had. But if you guys go and check, it's been a resident, the residence has already been changed, and the fact that the venue's been changed to the fairgrounds is only because he doesn't have enough time to get that done. Once that's done, it's gonna be a semi-annual event. Twice a year, it's gonna be there. It says so right in his ad.
Okay. Well,
But you should have really probably looked at them before you were gonna get these questions.
we did look, we have been, as you were notified, so was council members. It wasn't, we didn't,
Look at the website.
yes.
You didn't notice those?
Yes, we noticed it all, and that's why we are changing our procedural bylaw to allow this discussion to happen. Because this isn't an application. This is an issue that we're trying to allow people to get the information so that they know what council is in the process of doing. They know what staff has looked into. You've heard from the property owner. We will be continuing to monitor this, and it will not just be pushed under the carpet. So definitely, I mean, I live on a very rural area that I definitely hear everything. So I completely understand your concerns. I understand everybody's concerns. We just need to figure out how we're going to move forward and what it is that we can, how we need to deal with this as a council so that we are doing it in the proper procedural manner.
And I hope that as that government, we get a newspaper every so
Yeah.
often. So I hope that any of this event information will become widely available to the
Okay.
public, because
Yes.
we don't want anything to slip through without us being aware of it, obviously.
And-
Because I would never have been aware of this.
Yes.
Unless I got this in my mailbox.
I appreciate that. Okay.
I would like to quote from the Smokies Tavern's Facebook page. We are excited to announce that this summer we will be opening up the tavern to the public for some exciting events.
Some?
Yeah, so, when, does that mean just that one weekend?
I was here to talk about that event in June. Did
Yeah.
I clarify that for you?
No, I just asked you about opening weekend, and you said, yeah, there is only one.
That's it, right there.
So you're only having one event?
So why do you describe it as some events?
You have some events at your house?
You've mentioned here on your Facebook page that for Smokies Gooseville Tavern, we are excited to announce that this summer we will be opening up the tavern to the public. You told us it would be private, so it says the public, for some exciting events.
We don't have any.
Okay. If anyone here allows us to go ahead as is it possible that after it's been approved at some level or forgotten about, that then in the future you'll be able to do more? That's the question.
It's my property.
Okay, next, if it's your property, then that brings us to the next question. Will you please make sure that your contact us page does not show a map which is directed directly at my house? Right now, people who hear, hey, there's an event going on at Smoky's Garage, go to the website, go to contact, and then see a map that shows my house. There are things that, I really liked your presentation, by the way. I really hope you're sincere. If you're sincere, you're a fantastic man, and I really want to meet you. But I'm a little concerned that you're a little careless with your contact us page, which shows could be leading to, who knows, people who are attracted to an image of, has anyone seen the logo? So here we have, maybe you could think it's cool, the devil smoking what looks to me to be weed. I'm a little concerned that I don't really want that kind of person, people who are attracted to that, coming right to my house. And for that, yeah.
So let me clarify.
Yes.
I smoke cigars.
Okay.
That's a cigar.
Okay.
And
I wonder.
Because I smoke cigars.
Yes.
Just to clarify.
Okay. So at this point, I think that we have had a general understanding of the concerns. We definitely, as council, want any written submissions or phone calls. Staff, of course, will take anything, but I think we've accomplished the first part of what it is that we wanted to do to make sure that you understood that we've heard, and Mr. Clark has been good enough to come and explain his part of it. Staff has been able to give you what they've done to date. So please, the communication is still open. We will do whatever we can in order to ensure that everybody is kept aware of what's going on. Feel free to sign up for the website notifications. If you want other forms of notifications, please contact us and we will do whatever we can do in order to keep the communication going.
One question, Laura. This question's directed to David Trotman. David, just that land is EV protected, it's under the Narwhal Conservation Authority, so have they approved any of this so far?
Portion of the property is zoned EP. The rest is rural A zone, which permits, rural residential uses, as well as accessory buildings, home industry, home occupation. There's specifications to those permitted uses in our zoning bylaw. Yes, NVCA was part of the permitting process, or I don't want you people get confused with the Ontario building permit, but the process for municipal approval, which is sort of zoning compliance, and the location of an outbuilding relative to its setback from an EP zone or wetland. So yeah, they were, they have issued a conditional permit. It is conditional, like there's a list of conditions there. And they were on site to identify certain tree cutting where the building would go. This is not by any means an open slate for clear cutting or anything like that. And the municipal approval was issued in conjunction with the NVCA conditional permit on the written municipal form, which says it's a personal workshop for Mr. Clark. Does that answer your question? We've issued a municipal approval, which is like zoning compliance. That form would have to accompany construction drawings to go to Dufferin County Building, which is a related but separate process under the Ontario Building Code. Dufferin County Building would review the construction drawings for actual construction. But, and then the zoning, the municipal approval tells them that it would have, say, the proper setbacks. It would meet coverage. The NVCA permit would inform them that the NVCA has looked at this. It's not, you know, set in a wetland. It's set back from a sensitive area. That's what their permit informs Dufferin County Building for. So well, there's more than one approval. So it's got municipal approval. It's got a municipal approval. It has an NVCA conditional permit. The building has yet to be reviewed by Dufferin County Building Department for a separate building permit approval, if they issue one.
Very difficult to understand and believe, really. I looked at that website, I looked at your advertising, and I said, holy crap, there's gonna be bike days coming to my neighborhood. That's what I said. And you know what? My wife's not here, because she was afraid to come. She didn't wanna come. And we wanna see you. And so that's the level of concern that you have to deal with here, right? And so you have stuff that's going on in the internet. You said you just found out a week and a half ago. This man here is saying that the work's already done. And he's saying, I just found out I had to make approval. I didn't know. I'm sorry. This is really hard to sound.
Okay. So at this point then, you've got what we've got at this point. And as I say, please contact us at whatever function that you want to. Yes, sir.
Is there a time limit as to when we can respond verbally, by telephone, by internet? So 24, 48, 72 hours, 96?
Whatever suits.
Okay.
There is no time limit, because as I say, we don't have an application before us to be approving or denying. We have an issue before us that we're trying to wrestle to the ground and to make amenable to everybody. So we do appreciate everybody coming here tonight and expressing your concerns. I'm sorry that we couldn't have done it in a better fashion, but we knew we needed to do it. So I hope you understand that now council is going to go on to our regular agenda. Please feel free to stay and help us. But I understand that you have other things that you would rather do. But thank you very much for attending, and please contact us at your convenience.
Want to take us home?
We'll take 5 minutes. Now, out of respect to what gallery is left, the question is there any questions for public question period? That's okay, that's okay. Yes, Bill. You had put a question forward to Les, and Les is away on holidays. And is that what your question is? No, you've got another one.
No, that would be one of the questions, but
Okay.
I realize the treasurer is gone for a week. However, I have the papers that I would like to give you. If you're interested, we can wait till the treasurer comes back. But the second point is about the Mono Nordic request for $25,000. I disagree with it, but I'm a voice in the wilderness about it, you know. But it goes from 25,000 to what, 34,000 with the DC charges. And for a number of reasons, I disagree with it, and probably it's not important. If you want to know them, I'll go through them, but you've had a busy night tonight already. But a question about if there's a vote coming up on this subject. Do we have a quorum that can vote on this?
Technically, I don't have a pecuniary interest, which if I did, I'd fill out a form for Fred Simpson and leave my desk, but I am a member of the club. And when this-
Don't you teach a jackrabbit
Yes.
class?
Yes.
Well, isn't that a pecuniary interest? No?
No, I don't get paid, Bill.
Oh, you've got to be paid.
Yeah, pecuniary means money, but I
Yeah, I
do.
didn't think you meant
Bill,
it
I do
literally.
agree that I'm so close to the club that when this subject came up at the last meeting, I do recuse myself from the table and I leave, as does Sharon. That leaves three
Yeah,
people.
well,
that-
why did you leave if you didn't need to?
Because I told you, I feel when I'm so close to the club, I don't feel comfortable making a decision about a request for $25,000. But it does, to answer your question, leave a quorum that leaves three people at the table.
But Councillor Mantelow didn't.
He's not a member.
I know he's not a member, but you said I go there now and again. I don't know. You sort of made yourself. It was that meeting a few months ago.
What's the question for me, Bill? I didn't catch it.
Can you vote on this?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm not a
okay.
member of the club. I was about 3 or 4 years ago, but I'm not attached to the club at all now.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I've
Couldn't
got,
ski
Your
well enough.
Worship.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Yes.
My question is really around this whole rumors floating around about quarries going below the water line, the whole provincial playing with the rules that we live by. Are we up to date as a council on what is coming down the pipe at us, or do we know of anything coming down the pipe? And when can we, this community, be informed about your fears and our fears? Because I'm a refugee from Momer, and we went through a very innocent guy got to do something with that quarry, and then we began to realize that they were serious. Are we really up to date on what the province is thinking? We hear rumors.
I don't know if anybody knows what the province is thinking. It doesn't matter which minister you talk to, but Mr. Trotman, did you have any thoughts on what has been discussed? I know through TAPMO there has been discussions from the municipal level and concerns that they have put forward.
So Mayor Ryan, through to you, there has been comprehensive changes being proposed by the province. Many of them have come or been initiated through Municipal Affairs Ministry. Ministry of Municipal Affairs, but not just. There was a Bill 60 that we addressed some weeks, if not months ago, regarding housing and other matters. It was an omnibus bill, actually. There has been changes under the appeal framework from the OMB to the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. That was Bill 139. And now more recently, there's a Bill 108. And there's an item under Schedule A here that's an announcement from the ministry. Depending on what council wishes to do in terms of responding to that bill and the related posting, so there's websites where people can make comment. I will be bringing a report back to council, probably the next council meeting. But there's been many, many changes. I mean, we could be here all night talking about them all. I don't know which ones are of more interest to you.
Yeah, my guess would be that as a citizen, it would be nice to have a bit of an aid memoir prepared before we have to be running in all directions trying to find out what the hell's going on, what do we think? What do we as a town think about quarries going below the water line?
Well, as a previous council, we already stated our case with the CBM pit down in the south end, when they proposed to go below the water table, and we did not agree. So
we could say that the position of Mono Council
has always
no
been.
quarry will go below the water line.
Yeah.
Secondly, I guess it's a tricky one in terms of our MPP. Where does she stand? Well, nobody knows where she stands, except we know that she's very strongly supported by the gravel industry. And how do we play around that kind of issue? And I say that during an election campaign, not this one, the one before in Mulmer, when people asked the various candidates, who's your source of information, money and stuff like that for your campaign? And they went down the line, NDP, Green, Democrat, Liberal. Got to her and she said, oh, just check my website. Well, people had checked her website and found that there were 3 quarries companies, her bigger funders. So we know we're not likely to get any support from her. How do we negotiate around her or whatever? You know, I would love to have it. If this happens, this is what we do. You know, maybe that's my army background that says you don't go into a battle without knowing what your options are. I'd love to see the council put together a sheet, or have one of your staff put together a sheet. If this happens, what do we do? If we get another quarry, what do we do? Because they're going to come fast. He's only got another 2 years to meet his needs, and he's a developer. Or he's in the pocket of the developers, as was shown, and he's the one said he'd never touched the green belt, and then there's a photograph saying he wouldn't help. Where do we stand? You know, I'm saying that's for a future meeting or a...
Yeah, no, and I appreciate your comments, and I think we are all of the same mind. We are not in favor of gravel pits, as the previous council did not approve the Greenwood application. So now we're into the whole issue of OMB hearing. So I think that that's public knowledge, and so everybody knows that Mono Council is not in favor of. That being said, you know, because of the aggregate industry has got long tentacles, and they just keep seeping in, but that doesn't mean that this council would change our direction. We could be the weak voice in the wind, but, you know, that's kind of the way it is.
Because the other one question is, how much farmland should we be looking at giving up in this process for North Quarries? Because they're not going to stop just at Greenwood.
You're right. I know.
So I would love to have some kind of a statement for council. This council believes no quarry belong on that good level one farmland out of existence for a quarry. And then we know where the battles are and where we can rally the troops.
Well, now that we have our strategic plan for the council for the next 4-year term, maybe that's something that we could put on our list of things to consider and make those statements.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so if there's nothing further, do you?
Yes, I filed a declaration of interest with two matters on the agenda. One is involving David Nairn, Theatre Orangeville. I'm declaring by virtue of the fact that my daughter has about 2.5, 3 weeks left on a contract with the theatre. And I know he's only showing a movie tonight, but in an abundance of caution, I should vacate the chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nairn, I feel like I should be baking you a pie or something for the time that we've made you wait.
Not at all,
I
Your
do
Worship. It's
apologize.
I love great theater and great drama.
And you did experience that.
I certainly did, and I was taking notes. It'll be a terrific play. Thank you. I just want to thank you for the opportunity just to come out and share with you, or just update actually. You've heard of, I know that CBC has been before you, and the project that we are partnering with. The Dream at Island Lake is the culmination of our 25th season. As you know, this is the 25th anniversary of Theatre Orangeville, a company that serves the entire community, serves all of Dufferin County. Even though it's called Theatre Orangeville, our reach, of course, extends far beyond the mere confines of Orangeville. And we're thrilled that, of course, this event, the largest that we have ever undertaken in the 25-year history of the theatre, is happening in Mono. And so that we are therefore looking for ambassadors who will carry forth. It's a great tourism initiative. It's a great arts experience. And as I say, it's bringing together, it will have a cast of approximately 80 people, bringing together professional actors who live in this community, members of my young company who are children between the ages of 12 and 16, who also come from all over Dufferin County, community players, local adults, non-professionals to work in the show as well as groups like the Sweet Adelines, who are going to be a component of what the show is. So it's probably going to be about 75 or 80 people on the stage for the event, which of course takes place at Island Lake between August 22nd and 25th. Partners are coming on at a terrific rate. Orangeville Highlands Rotary Club. We just received a marketing grant from Central Counties, just came on board with a $3,000 grant for helping to market the event and bring people to Mono. So what I wanted to do is just, since we're a great theater company, we wanted to show you a movie. And this is just a couple of minutes long, is what we're sort of putting out there to let people see what the project is about.
Here at Theatre Orangeville, we have a dream, and we're asking you to share in that dream. Dream of bonfires and of fairy lights, of magic, of wonder.
What the concerns are? No, they're legitimate concerns of what they are around noise bylaw, lighting at night, all of that kind of stuff, and it being done with permit, and it not being every Friday night there's going to be 1,200 people who are storming the place, right? It's a very special place, and it's a very special event, the majority of which will happen during the daytime. There are evening performances of this show, but given the nature of what it is, it's not a music event in that sort of sense. But the space itself has, the venue itself has also engendered a lot of interest within our industry of other arts organizations across the country who are looking to this project, who are looking to Mono, who are looking to Theatre Orangeville for leadership, particularly around the area of inclusion of developmentally challenged individuals within our community, and how we can support them and advance the cause of inclusion.
And before the event, how do you keep the geese off that lawn?
It's really interesting, Councillor, is that, of course, you know, the beach, the Crescent Beach, as we call it, or I think as everybody calls it, was closed more than it was open. What's interesting that's happened is that the structure itself prevents the geese from coming in. The geese are discouraged to come into that beach. So, well, no, I will grant you that. There are, you know, but when we did the first concert out there, the Blast concert that we did 3 years ago, just to test sound, independent third-party sound analysis and all of that, we spent 2 days just cleaning up the seating area. Now it takes us 20 minutes. It's the structure itself has prevented them from coming in across the water. So,
Remember 5 years ago when Bill built those plywood coyotes?
right. And you know how those work for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. It's a bit of it's a non-issue now, quite frankly, is that they're it dissuades them from, because they would come in that way. Like that's how they would come in over the water and over the shallows there and then onto the sand. And I don't know where they're hanging out, but it's not there right now.
That's great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity. And
Again, we do apologize for the delay.
absolutely, as I say, it was wow. People, I always knew that that people in Mona are passionate
They are.
about their community, and that was clearly demonstrated tonight. And I think it's really great.
We have a question from the gallery. Ed?
Question is just a supporting comment. Flo and I, of course, as many of you know, have volunteered at the Orangeville for a number of years. And, this is a Shakespeare production. A few years ago, a young company did Romeo and Juliet, and it's the most amazing production of a Shakespeare play that I've ever seen. This was a group of young people. And the other thing in terms of inclusivity, David has pioneered, I don't know if you've heard of the young, Creative Partners on Stage, which is the collaboration of Theatre Orangeville and Community Living Dufferin. It's absolutely amazing. It's going to be in the next few weeks, so everybody in this room should get out and see it. It used to be that it was family and friends that came to it. Now it's sold out because the community has recognized the quality of the production. And David, I know I've had discussions with David, communities all across the country have seen this. They've recognized this as something that they need. But it's an example of what theater's done.
And there are Mono residents that are part of that company as well.
Absolutely, there's a lot. We go to an annual. I'm sorry to take up more of your time. I'm going in a week. Next week, I'm going to an annual theater conference of Stratford's a member, Shaw. There's 148 different professional companies across the country. Theatre Orangeville being one of them. And when we start talking about these projects and the kind of things that we're able to accomplish in our community with the support of councils, with the support of citizens, the first question they always ask is, where is Dufferin County and how do you do this? And we say, we're not going to tell you where Dufferin County is because we don't want you coming up here with your big bad ways. But anyway, thank you very much for your support and for your time. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Pollinator Garden Management Committee.
Thank you, Your Honor. This time it's a two-person presentation with Gary. Gary Brown has recently taken on the portfolio of communications for the Pollinator Garden, and I'm delighted with this, and I'm delighted with his tremendous ability, as you probably know, with his experience with the Jazz Festival. We're going to make two presentations here. We're going to make it very brief. I'm going to present to you what has been done in 2018, and Gary's going to summarize what we're going to be doing in the new year. And I'm putting my watch out here to help us both. So we don't have a really good pointer, but I'm going to use this. This is the Mona Pollinator Garden. Over here is where the Hockey Road is. This is the laneway that goes into the garden. We have a pathway which goes around like this with a cross piece here, and the rest is all garden. We have a south plot over here, and this is the main plot here. This is what it's all about. It's all about the delivery of pollen from one flower to another. Sorry. It's all about the delivery of pollen from one flower to another to make seeds and fruit and all the good things. So in addition to providing habitat and ecological support, the purpose of this garden is primarily for education. The idea is that we can motivate residents to do the right things that will help pollinators. And that's really what our main purpose is. I won't go through the history here because you know about it. We started in 2015 at this council meeting when Sharon and I requested that Mona would support this, and it was done in spades. So the first phase was just to get the site prepared in 2016, And 2017, that was our first year of planting. 2018, which is what this report is about, is our second year of planting. So we have divided our activities into various areas, our planting, construction, maintenance, fundraising, etc. So I'll talk about each one briefly. The planting for this year, last year was quite huge. We had 356 perennials that we put in and 97 trees and shrubs. Trees and shrubs, by the way, are a very important source of pollen, particularly in the spring. Burnside helped us in the fall, both financially and with a group of people that, in concert with our members, did the planting. Maintenance is a biggie. Maintenance goes on all year long, and we have a crew of people that are vary through the year, but it's bi-weekly. We have maintenance Tuesdays and maintenance on Thursdays, and then we've had a lot to do there. The main thing is weed control, but there's also cleaning up, moving plants around, and establishing walkways and footpaths. A total of 25 people worked last year, and the total put in 644 hours. And these hours were unpaid hours. Okay? With respect to some discussions we've had about whether volunteers should be paid. We have our education. We have two parts to it. We have a children's education and a adult education. And we're very proud of the way this has worked out. The children's education has involved 6 different schools last year, 6 different classes in schools last year, elementary classes, and it consists of 2 parts. One part where one of our people goes into the classroom, speaks to the kids, talks to them, tries to educate them a little bit, and then the second is a half day at the garden. And at the garden, we divide the group up into about a half dozen people in each group, and they go around and do various things. They weed, they plant, they do they examine bees. They're amazed to see that they can walk up to a bush where there's 10 bumblebees all flying around and they're not attacking them. So they become aware that bees do not attack them. Adult education. Well, last year we spoke 3 times, or twice. We spoke to the Optimist Club and the Provost Club, and we have brochures at the site. And I'll talk a little bit more about education on the site when we get to construction. We have a group of people, mostly men, who do construction. You can see they're hardworking here. And one of the projects we did was a kiosk this year. And the kiosk has information about what you're going to see in the garden. It recognizes the fundraisers, and it has some important information about what you can see this week, or kind of sort of like blooms of the week, if you like. Signage. Signage was a big part of our work. We were able to get a Canada 150 grant for $3,500 through the county, and this was for decided we would do this, use this money entirely for signage. We really studied signage very much. Yes.
One sign has disappeared off one of the plant beds on that north pathway. Did you take it in for maintenance, or was it stolen?
I'll have to look at it. A number of them came off. The fasting was not good, and I replaced them this year. I'll have a look, Fred. Thank you. So we're very concerned that the signage would be appropriate in terms of content, that it have good graphics, that it be effective, and that it be well constructed so it's going to be here 10 years from now. We looked at signage when we traveled around the east end of eastern Canada and looked at different parks and what worked and what didn't. For example, on this signage here, this is a piece of aluminum which is about a couple of millimeters thick, and if you walk around this park, you'll see many of them are bent and misshapen. So that taught me that we needed something that was well backed. This is an example, I think, of what not to do. Too much information on a slide. This is an example of a really good graphics here. This is obviously a wetland. You don't need to read anything about it. I think it's excellent. Content is really critical. We thought about what are the essential messages you want to bring to people, and we decided that there were 5, and we made individual slides for these 5 messages. We also had 10 slides for different pollinator sources, such as trees or shrubs or perennials. So this is an example. I won't read it to you, but this tells you what pollination is all about. This is an example about the problems of pesticides. And this is an example of a slide that, or a sign which was used to elaborate on a particularly useful bee pollinator, which is the bee balm. This is the signage at the outset, as you leave the garden, where it says, "What can I do for pollinators?" and it gives you 6 points. On the left there, you see our current signage. This is a 6x6 cedar post, which is firmly embedded in the ground. It's a 1-inch PVC backing, and it's aluminum signage here, and these were made for us by Bill Monroe. We also have signage for individual flowers. This is the entrance signage, which was carved by Ken McGee, the bottom here, and it's a beautiful piece of art. Other things that we did in the way of construction last year, we started out with trails made of wood chips. We were able to get rid of all the wood chips and put in a gravel pathway, or walkway, which is accessible, wheelchair accessible, and this is going to be a permanent feature. Fundraising is very important, and I don't like to mention people's names, but I have to mention Sharon because she was very critical in getting some major fundraising for the pollinator garden. We also have a number of private and corporate events, and every year the town of Mono has come forward with $5,000. Our expenses last year were $12,000. Our income was, we have an undesignated or unspecified income. In other words, that's when John Creelman says, "Here's some money," and it goes into the general pot. We also have a designated fund, which is 2 particular donations which were made, which we're going to apply them to particular items. And one was already applied to the renovation of the walkways, which was about $3,000. The other thing that we did last year, which I think was significant, was we improved our governance model. When we started, the governance was based on 2 people in council, Sharon and myself, and Mike Dunmore and Matt Donor. And we have enlarged the committee to include the leads of every one of the subcommittees, so that the person who's in charge of planting, the person who's in charge of construction, the person who's in charge of communication, they're all on the committee now. So this has broadened the base of information. It has made people who are active on the ground included into the program, and we think that it will help also for the long-term stability of the garden. Community involvement. The biggest thing we did there was the grand opening, opened by our very own mayor and Sylvia Jones, thank you, who's there with the yellow wrap around her neck. This is a big social thing. We get together and work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also have a break in the middle of the day, in the middle of the work session, and we usually eat and chat and that. I think that's a major part of the attraction to it. Plans for 2019, Gary's going to give us this.
Thank you, Ralph. I'll go quickly through plan for 2019 and where we're headed. We've accomplished a lot in the first year and a bit, and we hope to carry on to do just as much in 2019. We'll look at sort of the main headings of activities, the plantings, the maintenance, the education, construction. Won't look at communications and finance quite as much. This year we plan to plant 128 trees, shrubs, perennials in the spring. We're looking at what we're going to do in the fall, but we haven't really put our plan together. We've had some initial thoughts of it. There were a few things we were going to do that we couldn't get done this year, but I think we're going to be just as busy as we have been in the past years. Maintenance. This has become, as the garden gets bigger and more complete, maintenance has become a larger event and takes a lot more of our time. One of the things we found is that the south end of the garden has become overrun with thistles, and no matter how much you dig them up, they never disappear. Every time you dig one up, it tends to split, and you've got more thistles than you started with. So we're going to do a special project. It's going to take a fair bit of work to plant competitive items that will push out the thistles of sorghum and millet. And we'll be doing that this fall because we have a large area that has become effectively unusable unless we do something with the infestation we've got. Children's education, a big thing we think is of interest to everybody. As Ralph mentioned, you know, the in-school event to get the kids ready to come to the garden, to understand what they're going to see, to tell them what to look for, and give them an idea and help build the excitement. And what we do is look for interested classes in the area to come and participate, where the schools bring the kids there over to it, along with some parents, and break them into small groups where they go around and discover what's there, look at all the plantings, and look for things they've been told that are out there, and see if they can discover what's happening and why it works. Also teach them not to be afraid of the bees. I might say I was afraid of bees, but I've learned better. A big area that we're expanding on is our adult education, is to say, how do we bring the knowledge we have and things we're learning to the adult group, to spread the message as far as we can. And this is a list of the people we've so far planned for this year. There could well be more, but we've gone off to a really good start. And a lot of people are showing some interest in saying, can our group come and see what you're doing? Because it's an amazing area when you walk through it. Proposal, a visiting lecture event, but this is for 2020, not 2019. And what we're looking, can we have a one-day or half-day event by a well-known presenter to say, okay, here are some things where we can attract an audience and get the message wider. I think Ralph talked to David Suzuki, but unfortunately his fee was $10,000, so we said he's not on our list at this point. But somebody well-known enough that will attract an audience, a widely dispersed audience throughout the area, invite both experts and novices alike to say, okay, there's an interesting subject from an interesting speaker, let's see what we can do. We're also looking, while we're doing this, is to look for a sponsor to sponsor the event, because we hope to get several hundred people out to see it and learn more, and again, spread the message throughout the area. Construction, trail maintenance. We always need to do more trail maintenance. We're going to bury a water line. One of the problems we had last year was watering of plants in a dry area at times. Pulling those big hoses 200 or 300 feet is a lot of work, and sometimes it discourages us watering things. So we're going to have a water line buried out so that we can quickly look after all the things. We have to worry about our culvert. Interestingly, we have some very dry areas and some very wet areas where we have a spring in the middle of the garden, and sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, so we got to drain it properly. Pergola, we'll add that to have some climbing plants, and we're going to add more footpaths. We've got lots of areas now, but let's let people wander through, get closer to the plants, and not look at them from afar. Budget for next year. Well, it's a little more exact than I think but we have roughly $10,500 of expenditures we're going to look after this year. We start the year with about $8,400 in cash, and we have to do the fundraising, and I'm sure Sharon will help us find that money very easily. But the good news is we ended up this year with a good balance left, and it goes a long way to meeting the needs for this coming year. So I'd say when I look at where we are at this point, we're on a sound footing. We're actually doing some good planning. We started in January and February to plan the year ahead. We have great volunteer support, and we have great support in financing, because it's important that the community support the event too. And we get a lot of support from a lot of businesses who participate in it, and that's critical to the long-term success. Not just the individuals, but the businesses themselves support the event. Activity. So where are we headed for 19? How do we become a greater influence in the community for pollination? We think the adult events and the children's events are a long way to go there. I think the signage help. We're now getting a lot of traffic through the area, and the message is starting to come across, and people are asking questions, and we're getting people like the Horticultural Society and other organizations asking to come and ask them if we could guide them through the event. So I think that's a sign that things are going well. So where are we now? I think volunteers, like any not-for-profit organization, are the key to the success. We have a great group of volunteers. We just have to keep on adding to it. They don't come by themselves. You have to go out there and recruit them. Community involvement, I think, is critical, whether it's businesses or other not-for-profits. It's important to us that this becomes a community resource, not just won by a bunch of fanatics. So let's see if we can get all those people in there helping it. In education, again, help people understand why we're there. So where are we going? We have to do a concerted effort to build volunteers, to recruit them, to train them, to make it fun. And my view of volunteers, if it isn't fun, you're not going to come back day after day, week after week. Some of it's very hard work. Digging and weeding for 3 hours, sometimes 6 hours is a lot of work. It's not, that in itself isn't fun, but the people are fun, and so how do we create that environment? Increasing the education is important, and again, community involvement and outreaching for that. Okay. So what do we have to do? We have to broaden our audience, not speak to the converted, but speak to a broader group of people and get them coming. And we have to continue the fundraising side to create financial stability. We can't let this thing wither after the first year or two of enthusiasm. We have to make this an important thing that people see that they need to support it to be successful. And there it is.
So finally, I'd like to just say thank you to the town for its very generous support, and thank you particularly to Public Works, Mike and Matt. This makes a huge difference to the success of this project. Thank you.
Just one quick thing, and I think I mentioned this to Sharon. The Headwater Streams Committee, I'm not sure why this happens, but we've got 2 or 3 grants from TD Canada Trust in the past for trees to the east of your pollinator garden. And I think Shannon Stevens from the Nottawasaga Valley Conservation Authority is going to get another one this year. In any case, she's been down pestering me, and we are going to be planting trees in that field, but she's quite aware of your garden, and she's got some trees, I think, for you. So the idea is to plant them at the far west end of the field, down, I've checked this with Mike Dunmore, okay. We're going to leave a 5-meter strip between the property line and that house, and it'll be trees or shrubs that are suitable to a wet environment, but she's also quite aware that, flowering things. But it'll sort of create to the west of you, way down the field, not a real windscreen, but a bit of a shelter for the rest of that field. So just that you're aware of it.
Yeah, I think we heard with us.
Okay, I just didn't want any surprises.
So in the audience, we have donators, we have people who've used shovels and helped build the garden. So and David Nairn has been to the garden. I caught him. He drove in, and I followed him in. I knew it was because of the car. And we had a lovely tour, and we blew his mind. Yeah, yeah. And I know that Ed, that the two of you have been there as well. So that's really great.
Thank you very much. Great work. Okay, so we're now on to unfinished business. So we have the first item is Mono Nordic Ski Club storage shed donation. So Councillor Martin and Councillor Nix. So this item we had previously had on our agenda, and it was asked for staff to come back with some recommendations. So as you can see from the treasurer has said that there is the opportunity, if we chose, to provide a loan, as we had done previously to the Lawn Bowling Club. I believe it was to replace the roof or do shingling or whatever on their clubhouse roof. And then the issue also is mentioned about DC charges. And I assume that the DC levy, because I didn't calculate, 40-foot by 50-foot building is proposed, or 2,000 square feet, so it's $4.06 per square foot, so I didn't calculate, is it? 8,100. It is 8,100, just because there's the $2 signs, I didn't know if that was a typo. So, I know that Councillor Manklow has offered a potential motion. So if you'd like to put that out to us?
Yes, I'd like to make a couple of comments. I have had some discussions with members of the ski club, and the idea of a loan is not something that they think they'd like to go ahead with. That's not the executive, but 3 individual members. So I think that the loan is not on the table for them. Also, it was suggested, and I need clarification on this, that because the building is owned by the town of Mono, that there would not be development charges. And the other question they had was, what about the HST? If it's a municipal building, I understand HST is considerably modified. Less isn't here.
Yeah. So, Mr. Simpson, would you have any background information with this? Is the building to be owned by the town of Mono then?
No, actually, I don't know what the arrangement would be on the ownership of the building.
Club members in the executive think, they told me that it would be owned by the town of Mono, and that was a new idea to me.
Mr. Dunmore, so nice to have you back. Do you know whether or not the proposed shed for the Nordic Ski Club would be owned by the town?
Not if they built it, right? Owned by the town as in?
If they built it.
If they built it, we would have to come up with some sort of an agreement on, very similar to the agreement that we have with the CVC. So we own Menorah Pavilion. We built it with our money. And we have an agreement that we can have this building on their property. And the lease is, I think it was 99 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's coming up
So
soon.
there'd have to be an agreement, a funding, or it's very similar to what the trails have right now, a lease agreement. They have a lease agreement, not a lease agreement, but a operational agreement of the trails over the land. And there'd have to be a similar document prepared, and that would have to go through solicitor. That would have to go through our solicitor to make sure that they would be protected on their investment, for lack of better words.
Okay, so we really aren't clear as to who would own the building and whether or not HST is payable, and whether or not we would be, because the discussion about development charges are applicable because conservation authorities are not exempt.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if we know. But go ahead, Ralph.
There are some issues with respect to this request. First of all, it's not in our budget, not possible to put it in our budget. And so that we might be able to make a small donation, but I don't think that we are in a position to come up with a sizable donation such as $25,000. Furthermore, in discussions I've had with the executive members, they feel they probably won't be able to come up with as much money as they thought they would, and that they're going to need even more money. So, as you may remember, we discussed the lack of a really energetic fundraising activity. They had pretty well put all their eggs in the one basket, which was the Petroleum Fund, and they'd also asked the Rotary, and they were turned down by both of them. So in my thinking about this, I felt that a private club probably was not a candidate for a major donation by us, but as I delved more into what this club has been doing, and particularly with respect to trails, for 3 seasons of the year, they could take care of all the trails with no financial help. And that's a fairly big commitment. And they do other things such as Winterfest, et cetera. So I think that we have more of a partnership with this club than you might think.
think on first glance. I think that I could be persuaded to support a donation, but not at this time. And that's why I've proposed a motion, which I'd like to read. And it's a motion to deal with the request for financial assistance. The motion is that council postpones a decision on the request for financial support for the Mona Nordic Ski Club until the time of the development of the town's 2020 budget, and at that time the council will look favorably on the request. It's not saying we do it, but that we look favorably on it. Furthermore, at that time, MNSC is requested to present an updated financial request and to provide evidence of a major fundraising campaign.
Okay, so my question would be, I know what you're trying to say about looking favorably, but it still does unintentionally bind council to be favorable, so to speak. So I'm not sure how we could word it in terms of
I agree with you, Your Honor, and I'm not quite sure how to say that or just to leave it out. I thought that I didn't want to leave the club feeling that we weren't supportive.
Okay, so how about, and at that time, council ask for further details or investigation for the budget line or budget amount?
How about just simply saying that council will consider a new request
with the updated financial and evidence of major fundraising?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
I think we'll consider a request at that time, and I think that the next sentence is important because they are really thinking about their capital expenses and looking at them quite hard, and I think that they need to present an update on that, and they also need to do a major fundraising campaign. That's a very important part of it, and I personally have had discussions with a number of them about this, and I think that they're thinking more about in line with this. And in the past, they were thinking that one or two organizations would come through and be their savior, but that's not going to happen.
Okay. I am surprised that they wouldn't take the loan. Because the lawn bowling club did.
They're afraid of digging a hole and not being able to get out of it financially.
Anyway, okay, so we have a motion moved by Mantelo and second by Creelman, and that is, are you all right with the modifications that were?
Would you like me to read out what I've got, just to be clear?
Sure.
That council postpones a decision on the request for a financial support for MNSC until the time of the development of the town's 2020 budget. And at that time, that council will consider a request. Furthermore, at that time, MNSC is requested to present an updated financial request to provide evidence, to provide evidence of a major fundraising campaign.
Okay, all in favor? That carries. She's not coming back? Okay. Fair enough. All right, so amendments to the procedural bylaw, and that's provided to us by Mark, and the edits are in red. Were you happy, Deputy Mayor, with his clarification on abstaining from votes?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you go down to page 18 of, no, 5. was the first, okay. So is there any other, yes?
Just on 4.2, item 1, call to order. This is the sequence of announcements at the commencement of council. Call to order, location of emergency exits, public notification of proceedings being video recorded. I think it's more accurate to say recorded and broadcast, because we are broadcasting as well as recording. And we already have an audience of at least one person tonight who's been watching it on YouTube at home.
The CAO has reported that the audio and video sound and look good as well.
Okay. So there's 2 people who've been watching this.
Okay, vested interest. And anything else anybody has? So, I'm not hearing anybody, then we give the necessary readings to a bylaw to amend bylaw 2013-18, procedural bylaw that it be signed by the mayor and deputy clerk of the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Moved by Creelman, second by Mankelo, and your edit would be included with that. All in favor? Carried. And committee appointment bylaw. So, my understanding of this discussion last meeting was we got to the point where other committees did things that required extracurricular activities and time spent, etc. So, my concern about just giving Recreation Advisory Committee members a per diem for attending special events, we're going to get into the issue of when Heritage Advisory Committee members need to go on site visits or doing research at the archives or the Pollinator Garden Management Committee. It gets really too large for me, so that's just putting it out there. Councillor Martin.
Yeah, I have an I have an issue with people being paid for the events as well. For the meetings, I have no issue at all. But you know, we're being very generous in the first place because the definition of volunteer is unpaid. An unpaid worker, and the noun means a person who freely offers to take part in an enterprise or undertake a task. As a verb, freely offered to do something. So we're being pretty generous in the first place. So I think meetings are great. When someone has to go out of the area because I know this happened for Mono on a Bike, they had to go out of the area to get the stuff for, that. Then I think maybe mileage, it's appropriate to pay mileage for that. But, you know, I was on the Recreation Committee, and I was quite surprised the first time I got a check for anything. I thought volunteer meant volunteer, but that's a long time ago. I'm jaded now. And I think it's appropriate to pay people for the meetings, because that's when the planning gets done for the most part, and I'm quite happy with that. But for the event, my goodness, it's there are a lot of people who show up to help who aren't on the committee, and maybe they should be paid as well. I mean, it's really hard. I'll give you one example. Ross Martin, for Winterfest, for I don't know how many years, brought the equipment for the cross-country skiing and seating and the whole thing. Sometimes it took 2 trips to get the stuff there, and obviously 2 trips to get the stuff back. So, but nobody expected any money to go towards that at all. That was volunteer from his perspective anyway. So obviously, I think that paying it for the meetings is really good. Having said that, I want to throw in something else. We have, well, I'll just use the Heritage Committee. We have a secretary who does a considerable amount of work, and it's probably the same level as anyone who's at the chair. And so I would, at some point, I would like to discuss perhaps making sure that they are paid a little more than that $30 honorarium a month or per meeting. There's a lot of more work for the secretary than for the other members because they set the agenda in concert with the chair, and they, I mean, I know some of the committees have staff that are the secretaries, but there are other committees who don't.
But it's interesting because that secretary used to be paid more
Is that right? I didn't know that.
in years gone by.
Yeah.
So
I just, I see what the secretary does, but I'm only on that committee, so I don't really know, but I see what the secretary does, and I think that maybe we could discuss that.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, as you know, I, at the last meeting, argued that Recreation Advisory Committee people shouldn't get paid for events because it's a volunteer thing. However, in retrospect and after discussions with a few people, the difficulty now is that sometimes we have some people who actually end up doing, well, it's not quite a bit of work, but having to do quite a bit of transporting and of various materials, including even things like snow groomers for some events. And they've just viewed the per diem as well. At least they get their mileage covered. I personally don't feel too strongly one way or another. To unconfuse you, Your Worship, there's no issue about the Pollinator Garden people or the Headwater Streams Committee people. Those committees, they do not get per diems. They're not advisory committees to council. They're separate bodies, so that don't mix them up with the Recreation Advisory Committee people. I don't care whether you reinstate the $30 per diems for events or whether you pay some of the people who have to do a lot of the hauling a mileage rate. I did get from our CAO, when I talked to him about it, his only trepidation about paying the mileage is there's going to be some staff time, there's going to be some bookkeeping time to keep track of all that. So I don't really care which way you go, but I'm just telling you that we do have a bit of a problem.
Well, in terms of putting on an event, I know in the past, anything that is to be reimbursed is submitted as an invoice to be paid to the Director of Recreation, and that's looked after. So it becomes under the whole list of things for that event. So if they're getting paid mileage, then that just becomes another invoice. I don't know about tracking.
Do we have to change the bylaw to have them get paid mileage?
I think that would be considered to be a cost of an event, and that would be up to the director to ensure that anybody who's doing whatever work submits a mileage claim. Yeah?
At the county, we're given the option of claiming mileage for the regular monthly meeting or committee meetings presumably, or not. So some people claim, some people don't, and I think that that's how we should deal with the rec committee and make it very plain to everyone else that this is a little bit different than the other committees of council. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the planning committee already pays slightly more for the members, and the committee of adjustment pays slightly more for the members I think in respect of having to go out and do site visits. So I don't see a problem with the mileage claim. Some people will claim it, others won't.
And according to the mayor, we don't have to change the bylaw to do that, so
No.
that's already there,
No.
so,
Okay?
is that okay, Ken?
Yes, Ms. Mr. Simpson?
With respect to the mileage, not for what we're talking about for volunteers on special events, if that's going to be an event expense, but for committee mileage. No, I was going to raise to expand on what you were saying, Councillor Nix, from the CAO. Is council willing to consider reverting that to a flat rate in lieu of what this bylaw says, which is a mileage calculation? Just because we have an administratively, that's going to be more of an effort. And if it's something council's willing to consider, returning to some sort of flat rate for committee members who make site visits.
In recreation advisory committee meetings, is that what you said?
Oh, no, because the only one, Mono Police Services Board is what's listed in the bylaw.
No, I think it comes afterwards, where it says all committee members who incur mileage expenses will now be reimbursed on a per kilometer basis, where in the old, well, we didn't have a bylaw, but the old policy was they were reimbursed on a flat rate per occasion, where they were required to say, whether it's heritage or planning or whomever, had to go and make a site visit. So this bylaw now says they'll be reimbursed at whatever the town's current rate is per kilometer.
So that's part of the bylaw, not part of Schedule A.
That is in Schedule A on this bylaw. It is, so it is listed after Police Service Board, but it doesn't apply
it's
just to
referring to-
Police Service Board.
Okay.
That's an overriding statement for all committee members.
I don't agree with that. So there you go. That's my opinion.
Don't agree with that it should be
Reimbursing-
per mileage, or that it
No.
applied to all committees?
No, to all committees, because, well, I just don't agree with it, because it seems to be a little bit of overkill. I mean, they're all, members of these committees all live within Mono boundaries. It's not that far to come to the municipal office.
This doesn't apply to coming to the municipal office. This is if they had to go to some other location for a site visit. That's when they were getting
Okay.
mileage. So
But, okay, so then, other than the Committee of Adjustment, which are the only ones that really have a lot of site visits that they have to do, I mean, it could be argued that Heritage does, but, yeah. I don't see the need.
But you're not opposed to people in the recreation advisory committee who end up in a
On
lot of hauling.
events, because they have to go for long hauls to pick up stuff, so that's like an expense to the event.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
So that's the way I would look at it. Yes.
Just to change the topic a bit, do we really want to provide remuneration for the task force committees? I thought that we talked about this as a short-term commitment, and you're there for 4 months, 6 months.
Well, I
And-
think what happened, that this is a modified Schedule A, if we wanted to choose to go that way.
what you've got here is the actual Schedule A, and then following that, what was proposed originally in the draft. So the one that says draft, that was what was originally proposed. The one that actually gives a bylaw number, so the
Right.
first of the two, that's the actual. So in that one, the task forces are not included.
Yeah.
Thanks. Ignore what I said.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
But I'm still unclear on if the bylaw was written and passed, the intent had been that all committees were eligible if they were making a site visit for remuneration for mileage. That is not council's intention? You want that struck out of Schedule A in total?
That wasn't mine. Anybody else want to speak up?
The
I mean-
only exception was the rec commission, committee because of its unique
Because of the event.
circumstances, because of events. But, the site visits are taken care of for committee of adjustment by virtue of the fact that the member fee is higher. They're the ones who travel.
Yeah.
So then we should bring back a revised bylaw to remove the
I guess so.
mileage remuneration, that there will be no
Yeah.
mention and no remuneration for mileage, with the exception of events that are not specifically committee-related, volunteers that are going to events as the Director of Recreation determines. Is that? And
Does it
then
even have to
cost
be-
it to the event.
Does it even have to be addressed in the bylaw?
No,
or
no, it
can-
wouldn't be.
No.
It wouldn't be, that wouldn't be addressed because that's
Yeah.
not for committee members.
right.
So we would just completely remove from the bylaw any mention of mileage.
Okay.
Okay. Now, we could do that tonight, or we can bring it back again. We could pass a resolution tonight to amend this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Kim?
I just want to get clarity on it, because I remind council that for things like Winterfest, we have recreation committee members who are out picking up gifts. So it could be one trip one day, another trip another day, a third trip, a third day. I just,
But,
those.
and that's a cost for running an event.
Okay, I just want to
And
make
like
sure I'm clear that.
Deputy Mayor Creelman stated too, that
Okay.
somebody has the option of submitting their claim for mileage or not. So yes, it could change our figures for running an event, but I think we need to sort of draw the line.
And if
But-
somebody's being inefficient, I think we can have a quiet chat with them and suggest that, maybe one trip will do where three otherwise might have taken place.
Okay, so, Mr. Simpson, how do you want this motion to read then?
Okay. That we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to amend Schedule A to Bylaw 2019-21, Committee's Appointment Bylaw, as follows. That the paragraph referring to mileage remuneration be struck from the schedule.
Okay. And seconded by Drummond. And any discussion? All in favor? Carries. So you all right? Or did you? Yes. Okay, and so, Orangeville Library, you're leaving, aren't you?
Yes, I'm declaring an interest as my spouse is an employee.
Thank you. Okay, so, yes,
I'm a little unclear about the issue of paying recreation committee members when they attend an event. Sharon mentioned she didn't like the idea, and I don't think we really dealt with it,
yeah,
did we?
no, that was what it was all about. They're not getting paid for the event.
I thought it was all about the transportation,
It
driving.
was just the mileage that they would get paid if they were assisting in the event.
Okay, all right.
They would get paid mileage.
Thanks.
Okay, okay. So the Orangeville Library's request for the $165 non-resident fee, and you've got the report from Les Luca. And so Fred Nix is moving the motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw authorizing the town of Mono to enter into a service collection fee agreement with the Orangeville Public Library Board substantially in the form as attached as Schedule A to the bylaw, and that it be signed by the mayor and deputy clerk of the town of Mono, sealed, and engrossed in the bylaw book. Seconded by Martin. And is there any questions? All in favor? Carried. Okay, municipal gateway signage.
I thought we were supposed to get a report on this. That's what our minutes from the last meeting said. All we got here's a presentation.
Well, I guess, yes, we've already had this, but we don't, we have to make a decision, so that we can ask to be part of the county's direction. And I'm just saying it up front, I think it's wonderful the county's doing this, but I don't see it makes any sense with what we currently have in Mono. So we'd have to change our signage, like, so we've got those really nice looking signs that Mono has erected, Highway 10, right at Starview. And then we have the other one coming down Airport Road, right south of 89. We have the one just south of Primrose, and then we have the other one coming north, Mono on Airport Road.
Just north of mine.
Yeah, on Airport Road. And, but that's just my take on it. I mean, this signage is great. It's wonderful for a county, but it looks so generic to me because I see Innisfil, I see Barrie, I see Aurelia. They're all the same, you know. And so this looks very similar, but doesn't mean that I don't approve of it at the county level. But I really have a hard time going on to, what is it, the third page, and you see where they put in Township of East Garifraxa. And it's just, that doesn't make any sense. So that means that the signs that we've put up, we've got to take down, quite frankly, because they don't match. Yes. You disagree?
I disagree somewhat. I like this, I like the concept of it, but I hate to see a good sign go to waste. So my thought was we could redeploy our existing signage to other entrances to the town, apart from the provincial highways and county roads that they are currently on. I don't know where, I can't off the top of my head suggest a location, but I'm not in favor of junking the existing signage. I think that we could redeploy it, and it will age out over time and be replaced by something more akin to what's being suggested by the county. The county, I think, is offering to do this for free. There's no cost to us if
I think so.
and
But I don't know how many we would get.
yeah, the other question would be, what's Orangeville doing? Because they have quite an investment in signage themselves. And they were the last to be approached by the county, and I don't know what the reaction was.
So, yes.
I am not enamored by these signs. I like what we have. I think it's got a certain amount of character, and it labels us as Mono. And John, I'm not too sure about having two signs. Like, what is our sign? Is it this one here, or is it the one we have now? So I don't favor finding another place to put them just because we don't want to throw them out. My vote would be to stay with what we have.
The concern I'd have is that Dufferin would be perfectly within its rights to erect its sign announcing "Welcome to Dufferin County" on a county road, very close to where we have our signage, and ironically in the vicinity of the much disputed and controversial sign at Airport Road. So we could get into quite a muddle here, depending on what Dufferin decided to do at what they believe would be their sign opportunities.
But don't you think that if Dufferin had a sign there and then we had a similar sign sitting right there, it would kind of look like we're in competition rather than we have another sign that's different?
That would make it 4 signs
Yeah.
at that point.
I do think that we need to have a discussion with what they think their proposal could be for Mono, as opposed to us saying, yeah, we're in and not having any idea what it's going to mean. I have no problem with these, the blue signs with the wayfinding kind of thing, but to actually put us under the county, it's like we've lost our identity. And I know you don't like to be a lower tier. So I know that there isn't no drop dead date, so to speak, but maybe what you and I could do is we could talk to them. How does everybody feel about that? Okay? And then we'll report back to you. See what they want to do. Okay? Put that on your list. Okay, so duly noted. Okay, we'll be fine, people. Just hang in there. New business, amendment to the dog bylaw, Phillips, Teixeira, Kennel. And so, Mr. Trotman, again, you've got another planning report, and so you want to make an amendment to our actual kennel bylaw in keeping with what we've done with them.
Correct, if I can just find my report here. Anyway, there was a hearing, I think it was May 5th, for my report. Here we go, sorry. There was a hearing that dealt with the rezoning proposal on this property. The board heard evidence, and the two budding owners were also there in the kennel, and there's 5 items there. I've had discussions with our Director of Public Works. There's requirements you can see for 2 as a backflow preventer. So number 3, the security deposit captures the cost of that if it were to not be completed. And then there's the remaining portion would cover security for the additional nominal amount of landscaping.
Okay, any questions? Yes.
These same people have approached me about a problem that they're having with large transport trucks parking on French Drive, and whether that area is a no parking zone. If it is no parking, it's not signed accordingly, and some of these transport trucks, in fact, are blocking driveway entrances.
I think
So,
both
Mr.
Mr. Dunmore and I can speak to
Dunmore
that, but I
has
mean,
gone through it.
our bylaw enforcement officer has been involved with that.
Well,
There has been some,
I want to see the OPP handing out Part 2 tickets, not our bylaw enforcement officer. The OPP should be handing out Part 2 tickets.
We can take that direction. If that's the process that council would prefer to go, then we can take that direction as staff for sure.
I would love to know the last time we've actually issued a parking ticket.
That
And
wouldn't make you happy.
That proves my point right
So with
there.
respect to, and I think that might be a police services potential issue or something that could be brought up there.
We have talked about it, and
Yeah.
we'll raise it again.
So there's a misconception of some sort that there is no parking on French Drive. However, our parking bylaw does contain sections such as no parking closer than a meter to a driveway, no parking in front of a fire hydrant, no parking in front of, or 9 meters to a stop sign. So there are, and the Highway Traffic Act definitely takes obstruction of blocking a lane, obstruction, so parking on top of a hill is not a good idea. So those are definitely issues. Bylaw enforcement has spoken to the business that is probably infracting, and that report was done last week. We probably were informed at the same time that you were. Sounds like the same complaint. And Laura was brought into that, and Laura and I have yet to sit down, I guess, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's on the radar. Okay. Okay, so we have a motion that council receive the report from the Director of Planning dated May 6, 2019, and considers this a minor amendment, and that council has no objections to the proposed modifications to the approved site plan as set out in SPA file 2019-03, subject to the following. 1, installation of additional landscaping to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. 2, installation of commercial backflow preventer as required by the town's Director of Public Works. 3, payment of security deposit in the amount of $7,000 to ensure completion of number 1 and 2 above. 4, payment of development charges as required under the town's development charges bylaw 2009-43. And 5, provision of insurance details as set out paragraph 16 and Schedule F of the site plan agreement. Mover, please. Creelman and Manctalo. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. And now we're at the tender, supply and delivery of various petroleum products. And so the report's here from Mr. Dunmore. Any questions of his report? Yes.
Just a question, Mr. Dunmore, about how can they, given that fuel prices are changing all the time, how can they come up with a 4-year price and be comfortable with it?
So it's basically the delivery price?
It's not the price of the fuel?
The price of diesel and dyed diesel is based on the rack rate, and rack rate is the daily rate that's posted, and that would set your rate at your pumps that you see as well. So there's a rack rate plus delivery cost, excise costs that are added to the rack rate. So the delivery cost is basically what was focused on with respect to this. The price per liter at Suncor, which is down by, I believe, Finch and Jane, where they had the problem there. Anyway, a while ago, but that's where the rack rate comes out of. So the delivery cost is really what we're focusing on.
Okay, so this is not a total cost. You'll have your rack rate on top of it.
We're not going to pay 88 cents a liter for 4 years. That's for sure. So that first line, if you look at the first set of charts that I've provided you, the fuel rates will change, but the delivery cost and the taxes will be equal.
So we have a motion that council for the town of Mono accept and award the supply delivery for various petroleum products to Arthur's Fuel, Inc. for a 4-year period commencing on June 1st, 2019 and ending on May 31st, 2023. I have a mover. Moved by Martin. Second? Nix. Any discussion? All in favor? Carries. And item 4, new Tecumseth Public Library non-resident fees. I always love this one. Unbelievable. Anyway, so assuming that there's no objection, the motion that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw authorizing the town of Mono to enter into a service collection fee agreement with the new Tecumseth Public Library substantially in the form as attached as Schedule A to the bylaw, and that it be signed by the mayor and the deputy clerk for the town of Mono, sealed and engrossed in the bylaw book. Moved by Martin and seconded by Nix. And any discussion? All in favor? That carries. And Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I asked that this motion be brought forward to new business as opposed to a notice of motion, because time is somewhat an issue here. Many of you will know that the provincial government is increasing speed limits on certain 400 series highways by a grand 10 kilometers per hour, which sort of begs the question, what's the point? At the same time, they are cutting the OPP's traffic enforcement budget, which may or may not impact us, and we're going to try and find out whether it does impact the Dufferin detachment. So I think given the environment we're in, we need to send a really strong message that these fees have not increased for over 20 years. In fact, I can't find anyone who can remember when they were last increased. And there is a process of doing it through the Chief Justice of the Ontario Court of Justice, who has the sole discretion to increase rates. And I think it would be rather novel if a motion was to be received by the Chief Justice calling on her to reconsider the current, frankly, low and embarrassingly low speeding rates. I have also included a little bit of background about the number of charges provincially under the Highway Traffic Act for speeding offences, as well as the percentage of charges in Caledon Dufferin that relate to the Highway Traffic Act and speeding, as well as the average fines for both speeding provincially as well as average of provincial offence fines province-wide.
Okay, so I'm not going to read the whole motion, if you do not mind, because
no problem
it
with
is completely encased on the document that was circulated. So moved by Creelman, seconded by Manktolo. Any other discussion? All in favor? That carries.
Thank you.
And Schedule A. So Sharon, do you want to start?
I'll just pick on 9, number, I guess it's number 9, and I just wondered what impact that has on us.
So this is the More Homes, More Choice?
Yeah.
So,
And
Mr.
there's
Trotman?
a lot of discussion about, employment areas and all this kind of thing. What does this mean for us? I've looked at all these, gone to all these growth places and everything, and nothing really that pertains to Mona. What is our...
Yeah, we just got this recently. It was announced May 2nd. It's another very large omnibus bill, as was Bill, I keep saying 60, I think it was 66. I can't remember the number exactly. But it's going to affect 13 key pieces of legislation. So I will be bringing a report back on May 28th. I suspect there will be some dialogue about the various acts that are being affected. I mean, a major thrust is to certainly repackage a lot of the pieces of the legislation, particularly where they are affected by or affecting housing, and sort of try and align the amount of approval processing related to the size of projects. That's one thing. There's changes to the LPAT Act. There's changes to the Planning Act. There's changes to the Development Charges Act. I believe CN Watson might be addressing that in the next meeting as well, but I've also addressed it I've got a draft report coming back to you folks. And then it goes on to the Environmental Assessment Act, Protection Act, Heritage, Endangered Species, Cannabis Control. It goes right down the list. It is an omnibus bill. For us, I think really it will be about the housing matter, how we'll make changes to the Planning Act, LPAT. There's also the Conservation Act changes that I'm sure Councillor Nix is aware of. So I don't have specifics in terms of subgeographical impacts, but the major theme will be to allow for a much broader range of housing from large scale down to small scale, and to help offset the lack of the supply, particularly in the rental market area. So a classic example would be not just allowing a second suite in your house, in a basement or a walkout basement or something like that, but that if you had a separate garage with a secondary upstairs loft area, or one you could construct over it, that could become a rental unit as well. So,
I didn't mean to start you, David. I want to speak on this issue too. I spent a good part of the day reading Bill 108 and trying to figure out what's going on. And it's over my head. There's too many sections, but the two that I'm really worried about, like on the DC charges stuff, I didn't understand all that, but I am concerned about the proposed changes to the Conservation Authorities Act, and Conservation Ontario has written a memo to the province. Among other things, they've asked simply for section whatever it is to be deferred, because they don't have time to properly get back to the 36 conservation authorities, who then in turn would have to talk to municipalities to get their positions right. And I'm also wondering if the town of Mono shouldn't say, correct me if I'm wrong, the deadline for comments on this is May 21st?
I believe for the Conservation Act, it is May 21st. For many of the other acts, it's June 1st. Not much time.
That still doesn't leave, you've got to come back with a report. I just wondered if the town of Mono should also say, look, the other part, the two parts I concentrated on were the Conservation Authorities Act and the impact on the species at risk. It's interesting that the provincial government would cut the funding for flood control to conservation authorities 2 weeks or a week before we had some major floods in Ontario. And they now, on May the 2nd, come out with a bill that will partially gut the Endangered Species Act the week before the United Nations comes out with a report that says we've got something like 1 million species in the world that are on the road to extinction. And here goes Ontario, right, helping the United Nations along. We'll do our part on extinction. We'll get rid of the Jefferson salamander for all I know. But I really am worried about this bill, and it's so complicated and so big. And I think it's important that, well, AMO's already they've on their website. It's not a position; it's more of an explanation as to what's going on. There's so much going on here. Are we safe in leaving it to our next council meeting if he says the comment period ends June 1st? It ends May 21st on the Conservation Authorities Act, which is before our next council meeting. I'm just wondering if we should take some action tonight, but it's more complicated than I can even begin to tell you what action we should take, other than to let the government know we are concerned about this Bill 108, and we really think we need more time to evaluate all these 13 pieces of legislation that are going to be affected.
I think that's going to be a key theme, the deadline dates, but I don't know if those are going to change, frankly. But I mean, that would be, I agree, that's a first step. It certainly needs more time to digest. And never mind a small rural municipality like Mono, but even some of the larger municipalities are struggling with the deadlines.
Could we even let our MPP know that we as a small municipality, we just need more time to consider these impacts on 13 pieces of legislation?
So is that doable, that we could fire off a letter under my signature?
I think so, because I think that's probably the most substantive and clear response back, is that if you want meaningful comments, province, we need a bit more time to think about this.
Could I give you an example of one of the dilemmas of the Conservation Authorities Act? They're going to define our core mandate. I don't understand the word, okay, but I know Conservation Ontario is worried about it. So, for example, I've got to make this example up partly because I don't fully understand it. We're going to be limited to a few things, and if we want more than that, we have to get we have to enter in MOUs with our municipalities. All right. Let me give you one example that I thought of when I was reading that. Most of our conservation authorities around here do outdoor education. Well, if I understand the language, apparently that's not a core mandate. Okay, so the NBCA, let's say, they do very successful outdoor education. Oh, of the 18 municipalities, one puts up their hand and says, we don't want to participate anymore. Oh, so reduce our levy, okay? Or whatever they do. Now, how do we do that? Let's say kids from the high school in Alliston are going to some event at the Tiffin Center. All the kids from Adjunct Saskatchewan, you'll get off the bus because I just don't understand how this is going to work. Maybe I'm worrying too much, but there are things in these changes that are really quite perplexing and quite worrying, and I think we need a lot of time to consider them. If you could fire I was just going to say, I think this is all deliberate. There's something like 24 different surveys out there for the public to fill out. The most egregious one being the aggregate survey, which was biased in the extreme. It might as well have started out by saying, and how can we help the gravel industry today? But I think that this is all deliberate. They are trying to create the fiction that they are consulting, when in fact they have an agenda. And they're trying to overwhelm us with legislation that they don't even themselves appreciate the consequences of. I don't know how you say that in a letter to the MPP, but I would sorely like to.
Well, I think it's doable because when Mark and I went to speak with her regarding the community safety and whatever, her interpretation of it, the legislation, the way it's written, is totally different than what we have heard or have read. And so she was checking back on that. So that's fine. So I think that kind of message needs to come across again. So if you're comfortable with that, Mr. Trotman and I will design something and make sure that our deputy CAO allows us to send it off. Or deputy clerk, deputy CAO, whatever. So that sounds good. Okay. Did you have anything else, Sharon?
Yeah, I did. I would like us to support the township of McKellar.
Funding cuts to library services?
Yes. That's a really difficult one for particularly northern small libraries. But it will certainly have an effect on Shelburne, which is my big focus. Is
So-
there a way we could,
Your worship, I do have a sample resolution prepared in case that did come up.
Well, aren't you good? Go for it.
Okay. Whereas the town of Moto considers public libraries a vital service to community well-being, especially in rural areas such as ours, and whereas public libraries offer much-needed support to the very vulnerable members of our society, including children, seniors, recent immigrants, and low-income citizens, and whereas the province has cut the budget for Ontario Library Services by 50%, and whereas this funding will end the interlibrary loan service to libraries, and whereas due to limited resources available to some libraries, the interlibrary loan service is of great importance to its patrons. Now therefore be it resolved, the Town of Mono Council requests that the province reconsiders the 50% budget cut for Ontario Library Services and finds other means to fund necessary library services, and that this resolution be forwarded to Dufferin-Caledon MPP Sylvia Jones and all County of Dufferin municipalities.
thank you.
Can I suggest it also goes to the minister responsible for libraries?
Yeah, that's culture, tourism and whatever. They got lots of money.
Minister of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism?
Yeah, and whatever else is on the shingle. There's like, it's a
Right.
big long.
I'll look that up.
Okay. So moved by Sharon and seconded by Ralph, and all in favor. That's great. Thank you. And
I'm done now.
you're done now, and do you have anything else, John?
Just two things. One is I have the notes from our first internet committee meeting. They're fairly dense in as much as there are many, many links to various websites and statistics and so forth. We have another meeting planned in the near term. The second thing that I would comment on is the OPP Comprehensive Ontario Police Services Act. I'm not certain what that all means, except if I haven't, I should indicate that the Police Services Act was recently revised, and there is some suggestion there that we may lose our police service board through a consolidation process whereby a detachment gets a single board
Fred, did you have anything?
Well, just quickly, and I know you've all read it, but that excellent report under number 7, but it was a very healthy financial statement, but I hope you read my comments, and my math was a bit approximate there, but the next item, number 8, gives the more precise figures that with the cut in the flood support to the NVCA, there will be, if nothing else happens, a 3.7% increase in the levy next year. So add that on top of whatever increases the NVCA already feels, and I'm assuming Credit Valley is going to be giving us the same story.
Ralph?
Well, that's a good report. Please send me Ryan Post's report.
Report, I will.
Number 5, just interestingly, the tripartite agreement was approved. This means that we no longer pay an equal share of the capital expenses, and we now pay a share based on the formula which we use for running expenses, which is closer. It's based on 3 factors, but it's close to our population.
And it was fascinating demographics, but I think it had something to do with the change in council.
I think it did.
And the change in staff, because it was a big harangue for how many years, and then all of a sudden, just came in, all approved, and was like, okay, we'll accept.
Well, Your Honor, I have to point out there was a new chair of the board.
That's what it was. Oh, I'd forgotten that point.
And I have a couple of others to comment on. The other thing is that we have a new fire truck. And we have a little idea that we'll do a little education about the fire board, about how firemen operate. And then we'll have a little bit of educational session perhaps with each of our meetings. And the first one was an introduction to the fire truck and how it works. So people got up and sat in the driver's seat and various things. It was, I didn't toot the horn. Number 18. This is really disturbing. This summit was actually held down in Caledon on March the 29th, and it was rather quiet. Nobody knew it was going on. There was one TAPMO representative, and she has written a report here, and it's really disturbing because it illustrates where the stone, sand, and gravel organization would like to go in terms of legislation. And they'd like to remove the considerations that are central to whether or not we have an aggregate pit. They'd like to remove the ability to have studies on hydrogeology, on dust, on noise, on endangered species. Pardon?
What's the point?
Yeah. So I think they want to remove the municipalities from having any say, and that's effectively what they're doing. So that's very upsetting. That's all, Your Honor.
Okay. So I have a motion that we accept Schedule A.
Excuse me, Your Worship, just before I go, does council want to consider appointing someone to the Joint Community Safety Wellbeing Committee that is being considered by other municipalities? So items 15 and 16, where...
We're explicitly told that we have to do it on our own.
No, that's not the understanding that myself and Mark had when we attended the webinar, that they were very much, the province, anticipating municipalities going together. That has to be done at lower tier. Can't be done at this point at county, as far as our understanding. I know Sylvia Jones expressed that might not have been their intent.
And so that's one of the things that she was getting back to us about, to clarify, is it acceptable? Because she said she did not want to get 8 different plans, all identical, but just with different letterhead.
So, okay. So I want to hold off on that then, pending what she has to say.
So if she hasn't responded back yet, then we maybe need to contact Lavinia at her office and to find out if where they are with that question. because that was her understanding that it would be not a county-wide plan. It was done at the lower tier, but it was not to be cookie-cutter approach. So if it was decided by all lower tiers that they wanted the county to do it, that was acceptable too, even though understanding that there's two municipal forces, police forces, plus the OPP on contract. So
But there is so much in that exercise that involves county services that it is arguable that the county should be the one spearheading it.
that's right. And
then we come in and have subsections that deal with things that are specific to Mono and to each municipality. But in the discussions that we had at the Joint Police Services Board meeting, it sounded like we could not do that.
And she is clarifying because she understands what we were arguing about in terms of cost, staff time, access to data, et cetera, et cetera. It made no sense. So if Fred can find out more about that, we'll be able to bring that back. So we can address this, we could bring this as unfinished business?
Yeah, we'll see if we can't
Okay.
get an answer from
Okay.
Sylvia's office and bring it back.
Okay, so a motion that we accept Schedule A to this agenda, moved by Martin and seconded by Creelman. All in favor? Carries. Okay, staff reports. Kim?
Okay, a few things to report. As council is aware, according to, as you see in item number 21, I should say, we were successful in the grant application that I wrote for the summer student. That's the good news. The part B of that is we asked for 16 weeks of subsidy, and we were granted for 8. So just wanted to let council know that. For one student, that's correct. In follow-up to that, just letting council know that the interviews for summer students were completed yesterday, and I'm happy to say that Emma Holmes will be returning with us this year. She's the summer student we had last year, and she has got one more year of recreation management college program under her belt, and planning to go to university for the same program to get a degree once she's finished. And so she'll be bringing that much more knowledge with her this year, and she's thrilled to be back with us. So Emma will be starting either Friday or Tuesday, depending on whatever her schedule permits.
Use a chainsaw this summer?
Mr. Nick, Counselor Nick. So yes, she'll be available for extracurricular activities out on the trails, helping counselors who are doing inspections, whatever. Anyways, what else can I tell you? Mono Center, we've just finished totally repainting all of the rooms at Mono Center, inclusive of the coat closet. A few minor more painting has to be done, but I'm happy to tell you, inclusive of the ceiling, it was all done in-house by staff. So I encourage you to go take a look. It looks really great. Gardens will be started this week, hopefully tomorrow if the weather holds up. But you will see rec staff out working on the gardens over the next few weeks. And Mono on a Bike, we had that a week ago Sunday, and I must admit it was the nicest day of the year so far. So Mother Nature did help us out that way. Considering we only had 13 people registered for the event, when it came up to the exact day, we ended up with 46 participants. So our CAN bike instructors were really happy with that and said they really didn't were happy that they didn't have any more than that because they felt that that was all they could handle. So it turned out to be a really good day. And upcoming program on June the 9th, we have our Learn to Canoe workshop out at Menorah, 9:30 to 11:30. So we're looking for people to register for that. Yes?
When do we start calling you Miss Heaton?
Now.
Now.
Your email said you were in the process.
She's got to get a new name tag, too.
I need to get a new name tag. Yeah, but I'm in the process of changing my name back to Miss Heaton. And I'm also very happy to let council know that as of last Thursday, I am a first-time grandmother. So, thank you very much.
Wow.
Little Ruby May made her entrance at 7:58 a.m. last Thursday morning.
Was she early?
No, she was right on her due date.
Really?
Right on her due date.
Great.
Yeah.
Ruby May, that's nice. Okay. Mr. Dunmore, are you changing your name too to acting deputy CEO?
You should be sitting up there.
Well, Fred wouldn't let him. He's got the seat all worked in. He doesn't want anybody else.
Change it to I want it to stop raining maybe would be nice. So so we got a bunch of potholes and we're trying to get to the roads. We just can't get to them yet. Roadside litter, I want to talk to you about this the day that we talked about it a bit, that we've picked over 120 bags of roadside litter up. I understand Councillor Nix did some properties for us as well, and it's the words from the roads department was disgusting, so it's just too bad. I don't know why people can't use receptacles. Street sweeping's done. We had a lot of sand down this year, so we got quite a bit of dust. 30 Side Road opened, as council was aware. Purple Hill deficiencies, we're try and get in there. Everything's on hold because of weather right now, though. Hydrant flushing's ongoing, and the
Did Rogers rebury their cables properly?
we're working with Rogers. I don't know that.
But they'll have to do that before you put the final asphalt on it, won't they?
Yeah, we're not letting them touch our asphalt, so they'll be doing some. They did get the cables under the road for the sections that they needed to. There's still some straps through the trees, and we met with what we believe to be the appropriate people at Rogers who've taken this seriously. So they're working on that now. Link line's been in there, and we do have some deficiencies in there that we need to take care of. The biggest thing was the slope stabilization, or the slope. That's the word you don't like. The slope failure today. I sent that email to council. If you have any questions on that, I'll be happy to answer it. But I'm going to need 2 or 3 weeks here to get a meeting with engineers in Nottawasaga Valley to let council know what our direction, recommended direction is going to be.
That's it?
That would be it. Thank you.
That's enough, isn't it?
I have more, but they're a little old. They're from a couple meetings ago, so we're good.
Well, there's lots, too much, but I'll keep it to the core stuff here. So going forward, just a friendly reminder, we have the pre-hearing number 2 for Greenwood, May 16th. So there's an issues list that will be discussed at that time, and we'll be set up for that. Census 2021, that's now loomed large, so I'm trying to affiliate myself with comments for Dufferin County, because I suspect that'll really be a more formal response back at the Dufferin County level with feed-in from the lower tiers. So that goes to growth and so forth, so that the census can be updated for that year. We will, of course, be taking the Community Standards Bylaw to PNEC, Planning, Environmental, Natural Heritage Committee, May 28th. We'll have our first Committee of Adjustment hearing or meeting on June the 4th for the Ag Center application. There may be a site plan file, big question mark, on Scientology coming forward, but they certainly have made a decision about what they're doing with buildings to remain on site versus those that have to be demolished and for rebuild. So, mhm.
There is some activity going on in there now.
How did you get in?
I don't, we have our section of trail, Frank.
Oh, right.
Is on their property.
Right.
And we were in there picking garlic mustard, and there's
Yeah.
hammers, there's something going on.
They are already replacing major roof components to some of the buildings. And they obviously finally came to the realization that some of the other ones could not be saved, so they're coming down. I was on site a few weeks ago with the team of architects as well as staff from NEC. There will, beg your pardon, Marilyn? I'm sorry?
Converted.
Oh, I just, no, yes, I know, yeah.
I'm sorry, I have to remember we're being videoed.
My understanding is that there could be some notable people on site for the grand opening. I dare not name names, but you can guess a few. Anyway, this site is unique in the sense that it will be at the higher echelons of Scientology learning for those who are, dispensing with their faith. So it's for those, those who are higher up in the organization, believe it or not. So it is a very important site for them.
They don't have to worry about grizzly bears and polar bears. Their website advertises that it's in the Canadian wilderness.
Well, if you get in the middle of that property, you might think that. But I mean, it's a big site, and the project is somewhere north of the tune of at least $40 million US, as I understand it. Yeah, so that may be coming forward in the near future. I just don't know yet. It's just one of those projects you get little bits and pieces, but certainly there's changes afoot based on the last on-site meeting. That's really all I have for now. There's many other things going on the site plan side of things, but those are the key ones. And of course, Bill 108, right? So I do have a report. It'll provide a bit of analysis. I know that's a little late given the June 1st deadline, but hopefully we can go back with some comments to the postings, the environmental registry. I'm not going to go through all of the acts, Councillor Mix. It's going to be the key ones. Planning, LPAT, DCA. At that point, I don't know about conservation authorities because we'll have missed the 21st deadline, but we're doing the letter.
I think Conservation
Yeah.
Ontario is this key hand of that.
Yeah. That's it.
So, Deputy Clerk?
So hopefully the video recording's going well. We'll find out afterwards. We'll check that and see if we have to tweak things and carry on with that. Once we're happy with it, we'll start advertising it. For now, we're just, keeping it low key. Citizen engagement survey will be hitting the street on May 22nd. So on request, we've kept the previous survey running. The police services survey. We were intending, I was going to close it off May 14th, but we'll keep it running until at least a public meeting is held so that you can solicit input there.
Even if you take it off the banner and put it someplace.
Yeah, we'll sort out a way to try to keep them both. And we have a series of online promotional material already made up for the citizen engagement survey. It was in the newsletter that went out, 10 days ago now. It was promoted in that, stating that it would be hitting the street on May 22nd.
Well, Canada Post isn't the quickest.
No. Didn't get it?
Not yet.
It went out prior to Moab, so it's slow getting to you. It might be in the ditch with some newspapers. And of course, we're running the Plaid for Dad barbecue, June 14th. Normally we restrict the fundraising to just within staff and council. I thought perhaps we might promote that beyond just staff and council this year. For the fundraising, if council's okay with that. We could go, a little more general, not promote it, too heavy, but give it some promotion on our social media channels beyond these four walls if you're amenable to that.
What does everybody feel about, is that all right with everybody? Yep.
Okay? And that's all I have.
And you, okay, so Ralph?
Thank you. 2 items and a question. Fred, could you identify what we're looking at here? We've got 2 things on the ceiling.
Yeah, each of those are cameras. The one that appears to be pointed straight at the mayor, but captures the entire council desk. So that's the one on the left.
Okay.
And then the one that looks like it's pointing at Mike is the staff desk. However, we don't put an indication to which one is currently being streamed. So the lights are on to let everybody know that the cameras are recording. You're just not sure which one. I have control at this box here. And we, of course, captured the video input off of the projector as well.
And this is a trial, but is it available for us to look at?
This is being live streamed because that's the only way to do it. So this meeting has been live streamed. If the recording is of good enough quality, we'll archive it and leave it on the website. Right now, if you go to the agenda for this meeting, you will see an icon indicating that this meeting has a video. And also on the landing page of our citizen engagement / agenda management system, you will have found a big, huge icon telling you that there was a live stream is ongoing right now.
Right, I can see the video there. I'm looking at it.
There you go. Now, there's approximately a 20-second delay on that. So you're not looking at your current conversation.
I would really hope that we could post it if there are no huge technical.
Yeah, if there's no major glitches, I have noticed it dropped out on 2 occasions, so I've been monitoring it. What we ran into problems is because the cameras are a different resolution from the projector, YouTube didn't like that. We had to bring the installer back in, and it seems to have resolved most of it, but it did drop out on 2 or 3 occasions on switching back and forth. So there could be some blanks. Careful, you're going to get feedback, Ralph, if you do that. We're going to end up getting feedback because the mics are picking that up, re-uploading it. That will cause feedback. So you shouldn't be monitoring that during council just for technical reasons.
How do I turn it off?
Turn the volume off so you don't get any audio feedback. The feedback is 20 seconds later, so you won't notice it for a while, but then we'll start getting it. Thank you.
Okay.
So we did have an invitation from the Island Lake Rowing Club for us to take part in a fun event on June the 9th, which we would put a number of. Kim is interested. I know it is. So that's an issue. And what time is Learn to Canoe Day?
Pardon me?
What time is the Learn to Canoe?
9:30 to 11:30.
Okay, well, we're fine. This starts at 1 o'clock. Yeah.
Well, that sounds good.
Fred says it's going to be an awful day. It's going to be a wonderful day. A day on the water is always a good day, Fred. So we have one volunteer on my right, Fred. Is there any other member of council who wants to take part? So.
I have to go to the Lawrence Scott's review.
Good.
Let me get back to you.
Okay. Well, what the club has suggested is that we get 4 to 6 people, and council and staff. So now I turn towards staff and see who's going to volunteer to come.
To just participate?
Yes. Yes.
To learn to row?
No, you'll actually have a little bit, a mini lesson, and then you get into a boat at 8.
And they say bye-bye.
Pardon? And there'll be some of the regular club members there, and we'll have a club clock soon, so you'll be well taken care of. And we'll do a little practice session, then we'll go out down to the North Dam and line up with Orangeville, Calvin, I'm not sure anybody else.
We can do it,
Yeah,
Ken.
yes, yes.
And we're going to race them?
It's a fun race. Exactly.
I'm so in. There's
Are you?
nothing like that in a big
Okay.
And bring one of those big water guns.
And the gentleman beside you, is he in too? Could you turn on your microscope, please, or your microscope?
Sorry, I won't be able to attend.
You do not look sorry.
I am sorry, because I know I missed it last year too, so.
Yeah,
it's too bad.
we didn't have it last year,
It,
but you did miss it last year.
That's right.
Are you going to feed us?
We're gonna feed it? Yeah, I'll feed you.
There's still some more staff here in Mass.
Fred is here.
I'm going to check and see, because I was hoping to participate last year or the year before when you had, and I wasn't available. So I'm going to check, because if I can, I'd love to come out.
Excellent.
I want to learn how to, try a canoe, as opposed to a Boston whaler, which is what I'm used to rowing.
Dave, are you in?
It's
Yes,
a Sunday.
I will admit, I will, check my schedule, but it's possibly, sounds interesting.
Wonderful.
Where am I going? To Island Lake?
Yes, I'll send you all the information. And yes, I'll provide lunch.
Oh, that's even more nice. Can I bring my dog?
You bring your kids. So we have Dave,
Mine just dropped,
Kim,
so I didn't know if I
and
lost it, but it's still
Fred,
there.
and Fred, Ralph. And is it true that Mike is not available?
It's true.
He actually just proved it.
That's it.
What was the date again, Ralph?
Pardon?
June 9th?
Sunday.
Sunday the 9th at 1 p.m.
1300.
The other item that I wanted to mention was the bombshell about the public health. As you know, the ministry has decided that they would like to downsize the number of public health units. There's 35 public health units in Ontario at the moment. As you know, we have one that involves Dufferin, Wellington, and the city of Guelph for 275,000 population. And so the proposal is that they would amalgamate with the region of Waterloo, region of Peel, and Halton. So this is really interesting. It's massive. It'll be the largest health unit in Ontario. It'll be about 3 million people that covers, about the same or slightly more than Toronto. And the focus of your population is down south of us here, so I'm not quite sure if we're sort of like an appendage, I think. So it's, nobody really knows how this is going to happen, but there's going to be a lot of confusion and time before it gets settled down. And the new health unit that we have in Guelph, the building, who knows what that's going to be, but people in more of the know than I am think that the center will likely be in a more central place like in Halton. So, and public health is a problem because it flies below the radar. You know, doctors often get a fair bit of coverage if they do something unusual, like a face transplant or something, but public health is just quietly doing its job. And it's really important. It's really interesting that public health is different than other health area, which are usually reactive, that we react to an illness. You have a broken leg or you have pneumonia, we give you antibiotics or you get an operation. But public health is proactive. It's preventing disease and helping to develop a healthy lifestyle. And it's extremely important, and it's by far the most bang for your buck. So that's my message.
Fred?
Just some quick ones. Sharon and I went to the Shelburne District Fire Board meeting, and there was an item I didn't quite understand. Our fire chief, who's back, by the way, which is good to have him back. This has been going on for some time, and maybe Fred Simpson, you've heard of this? There was a study done at the county level on communications, and that's really, I don't know if the issue is between different fire departments or between fire departments and ambulance or whatever. As I understand what Brad said, that report has not gone to county council yet, and he doesn't know why, but he's quite frustrated that there are some problems with communications. So Janet and Earl, we're going to bring this up from Mulmer, we're going to bring this up, not at your last council meeting because it wasn't on the agenda, but they were going to try to find out what's happening. So I'm just bringing our mayor and deputy mayor up to speed. There's some issue there that at least one fire chief in Dufferin County is upset that there's no action on this. The other thing, I guess I should, last Sunday, I, with Kirsten Ball, cleaned up quite a bit of garbage from off, both on Highway 10, but on the town property at Masters Creek. I think we got 5 or 6 big bags. Some of them were quite heavy. I really appreciated Kirsten's help. She was good help, although she told us tonight she drove by and there's another bag of garbage down there. We had Mono on a bike, which Kim has reported. It was, what would you say, 47 children at the end? I was the sweep again. We had the tree sale, which was encouraging this year, Mike, because boy, when I walked in there and saw all those trees, I mean, I don't know what the numbers were, but it was a heck of a lot more than last year. Got the rowing thing that Ralph mentioned, and on the 24th of this month, you have not answered my email yet, Ralph, we have an NVCA meeting, but it's our bus tour. I think Sharon wants to come, but I did tell him that I thought I'd be bringing Ralph if he answers my email. Okay, so that, it's well worth it, at least in the past they have been, because, you know, we all get on a bus. We actually go out, we see some planning things, we see some rehabilitation sites. They take us to a different part of the watershed and kind of show what on the ground, what a conservation authority means. I think that's all I've got.
Besides county council and meeting with Sylvia Jones, went to the hospital gala, tree day. That's pretty much it for me.
I'll keep it short. The issue of the, I presume it would be interoperability of the communications network. That would come to my committee. We may or may not be meeting this month, depending on whether an agenda comes together. But we'll follow up for you on that. And the only other issue, which is promising, is everyone knows I've been quite passionate about PLA court and holding that court in Corporate 103. And we have a proposal that we think is going to be attractive to the Ontario government and the senior judiciary. And a letter is hopefully going out in the next few days to try and get everybody on side. And it would appear that if people are amenable, PLA court will have 2 consecutive days a week in Corporate 103 and not be displaced.
Sharon?
I really enjoyed Tree Day at next door. That's always a really great thing, people picking up their trees, and we got to pick up somebody else's trees, which was kind of good, didn't have to pay for it. The hospice, so that was the 3rd and 4th. The hospice walk was at Manor Park on 5th, and I took greetings from the mayor to hospice, to the hospice walk.
How far did you
I-
walk?
Is that important?
Yes. 5-kilometer trail?
I was in the gator, picking stuff up. That's why I didn't end up with you. The Shelburne Fire Board was really interesting, and it was excellent to see Brad back. And he for Deaf and Family and Children's Services, and it raises money for the children, and that was at Manila Park, and Jessica Holmes was the speaker, and it was quite entertaining. I got to spend time with a lot of people that I hadn't seen for a while, because I did work for them many years ago. And it was tremendously enjoyable to find out what's going on, but also to be entertained, and a good lunch. Today was the Orangeville Fire Board, and I don't know, I get overwhelmed. I don't know, I don't think we have time to discuss what all went on, but I'm sure that Fred will have something to say at some point. I will have a library board meeting, we have coming up, the Headwaters Tourism on the 23rd, 24th, the NDCA bus tour, and I'd say that's it, so we're back here again.
Okay.
Well, I think the list is in there somewhere.
Okay then, so we've come to the end of our public agenda, so we are going to be going in camera. How many staff do you need?
I think Kim needs to stay, and Mike, are you going to stay for this? Okay.
So, and also Deputy Mayor requested that we add a legal matter to the agenda, just to
To
clarification.
the in-camera.
Yes, it'll be very brief, and I'm wondering if Dave could stay behind for that.
Okay. So that council moves into a closed meeting pursuant to Section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended at 10:41 p.m. For personnel matters about so that we introduce and give the necessary readings to a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Town of Mullen in Session 9-2019 held on May 14th, 2019, to be signed by the Mayor and the Deputy Clerk and sealed and gross in bylaw book. Moved by Mangtalo and
cameras are on.
seconded by Martin. All in favor? And then we're adjourning at 11:02.
Cameras are on, so I have to sit down.
And it's moved by Nix and seconded by Creelman. All in favor? Okay, we're done, folks.